think we're alive again. Hi, Gail, Robert Bob, Captain Lee, Margot. All right. Get some people over here. Let me just. Welcome back. Hi, Liz Tops. Hi, Chris Ree. Hi, Linda. Hi, GB. How are you? Hi, Earthbound Spirit. Hi, Will Lisa. Oh, we're going to another one. Hi, Kelly Schweingart. Thank you for getting over here. Kevin. Hi, Janae. Scott Peterson was where I started listening to Carolyn and Scooter. Oh, really? Rubbity Bob, really? Is that really? Hi, Raina P. How are you? Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Nicole, hello. Okay, so let me get rid of some of these tabs here. We have some of the things that have been off time. Okay, so come on. While we're waiting, I'm just going to go over the. Let's see. Let's go over the missing woman and baby here. Indianapolis police are asking for help to find a missing mom and her 3-month-old son, last seen on Halloween. Police say that Savannah Mason, 24, and Paris Hayes Jr. were dropped off in West Indianapolis, and that Mason may be in need of medical attention. They described Mason as 5'9", 145 pounds, with brown hair and hazel eyes. The infant was described as 12 inches tall. 12 inches tall? I don't think he's 12 inches tall. Yeah, he is. He doesn't look like a premature baby. I think that's a misprint. And 35 pounds. Okay. They say he's 3 months. He's 35 pounds. This must be, they must have misplaced some, that's crazy. That,
big as me already.
12 inches tall and he's 35 pounds. Come on. Stop it. With brown hair. They said 12 inches tall.
12 inches tall. Oh,
and
man,
35 pounds.
Maybe 3.5.
Wow.
Could that, come on.
Maybe 3.5 ounces.
No, they said the baby's 3 months old, Jimmy,
Okay.
and is 12 inches tall.
Right. But
The
you said
average height of a newborn baby
know.
is like 19 inches.
But didn't they say that the baby needed medical help?
No, the woman.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
The whole thing is
12
crazy.
inches tall. He would be a premature baby. Look, if you see the baby's head, Jimmy, the baby is at like a regular size. The baby looks like there might even be the size of a 6-month-old. Okay. That's just crazy. No further information was provided. Anyone with information is asked to call the IMPD Missing Persons Unit at 317-327-6160. I hope they're found. And let's see. So Casey. So Casey Anthony, who was acquitted in 2011 in Florida for her toddler daughter's murder, will speak out about the controversial case in an upcoming documentary for Peacock. Okay. The 3-part series will be called Casey Anthony, Where the Truth Lies. It will premiere on the streaming service on November 29th. Casey Anthony, who's now 34, will address the public's perception of her role in her daughter's death. The docuseries will also present behind-the-scenes footage from Casey Anthony's personal archives and evidence from the defense team who secured her acquittal. A trailer of the docuseries is available. It is noted that Casey Anthony had no creative control over the documentary. So, but I know somebody that watched the trailer, and she doesn't even speak in the trailer. So, yeah, we will watch it. Unless we can get that. Peacock, which I think we can. Casey Anthony, Where the Truth Lies. Let's see, she's going to share her side of the 2011 murder. See if there's anything else. What emerges over the course of multiple interviews recorded over 6 months is a startling psychological portrait of Casey Anthony and a complete narrative of what she says happened to her daughter, weighed against multiple sources of potential evidence. I believe the result will surprise many and cause the American public to look at this story in a new light. Oh boy. Sounds like she's going to be lying her head off. Look at it in a new light. Tamara Simmons, Ebony Porter Ike, Laura Michelson, and Sam Snyderman serve as executive producers on the series, produced by Blue Ant Studios, alongside co-executive producers Chanel Hudson O'Connor and Kate Turley Maloney. Interesting. I don't know. I don't hold that. There'll be a lot of truth in that. I really don't. Sorry. But we'll watch it nonetheless. I think it's going to be a lot of hype leading up to not too much substance. Let's see. Let's go back. And check in real quick on this. This high school hockey star was bullied to death by mean girls. McKenna Brown, a teen hockey star, committed suicide after alleged bullying by 3 hockey teammates. The group of teens had been friends for years, but that changed when McKenna asked one of the girls if it would be okay for her to begin talking with one of the girl's former boyfriends. Well, the girl said yes, but her actions over the next few days proved it was far from fine with her. The girls allegedly began harassing Brown via text messages. Even after McKenna apologized, they continued to attack her. The teammates encouraged others to cut ties with McKenna and leave her without a single friend. The bullies also repeatedly shared deeply private information about McKenna's sexual assault with other members of the hockey team. Within hours, Cheryl Brown would find her daughter dead on her bedroom floor. Since the bullying came to light, the 3 teammates have been suspended pending the outcome of the investigation into what happened. The Lightning High School Hockey League launched a probe, as did the Statewide Amateur Hockey of Florida, and U.S. Hockey hired outside counsel to perform another review. So, yeah, let's see if we can get anything else on that. That's just... There's another picture of McKenna. McKenna died by suicide in August during what should have been a joyful period for her family. It was the day before her brother's 22nd birthday, and it was 3 days before she was supposed to start her senior year. And it was 2 weeks before their parents' 25th anniversary and 1 month before her 17th birthday. Instead, following a relentless bullying campaign, the nearly 17-year-old succumbed to a tsunami-type feeling that she couldn't see through, her mother Cheryl said. 3 players in McKenna's hockey league have now reportedly been suspended for their role in the alleged bullying. Her family expressed their gratitude to the league, but said officials near their home in Pinellas County, Florida, could have done more to help McKenna after earlier cases of mistreatment. So, some trouble started around the beginning of high school when McKenna sent a sexually explicit photo to a boy in another state. And a former friend of hers who she had a falling out with obtained a copy of the picture and then distributed it. Almost immediately, McKenna faced brutal teasing and harassment. The Browns weren't able to pursue legal action, they said, because they were told that filing charges over the distribution of CP might also incriminate McKenna for distributing the same content. Oh, that's nice. That's great. Even though it had been a picture of herself. Around the same time, the Browns said that McKenna was sexually assaulted by an older teenager while at a sleepover. That piece we didn't know until 2 nights before she passed away, her mother said. Her first semester of freshman school kind of unraveled pretty quickly. McKenna's parents found her a tutor, a psychiatrist, and therapist, and managed to put her back together mentally and emotionally. She went back to school for her second semester of grade 9 to focus on athletics and academics and put the past behind her. She got good grades, got them all up to straight A's. Still, those incidents wounded McKenna, who was always a quirky, goofy, little impulsive kid. People would just tap us on the shoulder and say, "You guys, I don't know what you did to raise that kid, but she's incredible. You guys did a great job." McKenna channeled some of her energy into hockey, a sport she took up after her older brother. During middle school, she had a delayed interest in playing goalie, but the equipment was, she had a declared interest, but the equipment was exorbitantly expensive. And her mother said that she actually made McKenna sign a contract that they would pay for the equipment, but McKenna had to commit to sticking with the sport for at least 3 or 4 years. It never came back up. She basically doubled that timeline. She's also played varsity flag football. Hockey consumed a large amount of her time, and many of the games required out-of-state travel, which meant trips with other girls and their families. Let's see. So, her father's a fireman, her mother works, and they have a daughter with special needs, so they can't just leave their younger daughter there with any babysitter. So there were bonds that McKenna ended up forming with other players because of that, and the sport ultimately became the epicenter of another torrent of abuse, her parents said. The most recent conflict began as a normal teenage dispute. A teammate's ex-boyfriend expressed interest in McKenna, and they started to flirt. The trivial fling didn't sit well with some of the other girls. The teenagers accused her of breaking the girl code, and they allegedly began a coordinated effort to have her socially exiled. Now, her parents were not fully aware of what was going on, but in August, Cheryl, her mom, and McKenna were watching a movie, and McKenna declared that she was going upstairs to shower and clean her room. She might come back down, she said, unless she became too tired, in which case she would just go to sleep. The next morning, her father returned from the fire station and spent several minutes talking with Cheryl about McKenna's social struggles. Cheryl then prepared to go to church with McKenna and her brother, and she went upstairs, and then I just heard her scream. I found her face down in her room, her mother said. She can literally sleep anywhere. And when I first walked into the room, it didn't even occur to me that she was gone. I thought she was sleeping on the ground, as uncomfortable as it looked. I went over to try to turn her over, and she was cold and stiff. Now, after her death, her parents said several teammates and their families came forward with stories and evidence about the bullying. The girls were appalled. The families were appalled. They compiled evidence of the behavior, but it didn't appear the mistreatment violated the law. Criminally, there will be no accountability, her father said. Cheryl said McKenna's passing crystallines the need to change cyberbullying laws given social media and immense pressure over the lives of children and teenagers. I would like there to be some accountability and acknowledgement to what happened, she said. For her parents, the push for awareness has offered an additional sense of purpose. She's not here, but she is helping people. That's our mission, to help her continue to help others. So, let me just read that again. Cheryl and McKenna's passing crystallizes the need to change cyberbullying laws, given social media's immense pressure over the lives of children and teenagers and anyone. All the laws, they need to change for everyone about cyberbullying. 100%. So let's now go to Scott Peterson. Okay. Let's put this up. So a California judge is scheduled to announce a decision next month that will determine if Scott Peterson, convicted wife and baby killer, will get a new trial. He will attend the hearing on December 2nd at the San Mateo County Superior Court along with his lawyers. Judge Ann Kristen Masulo is expected to rule on whether Peterson's motion for a new trial will be granted. California Supreme Court was ordered to re-examine Peterson's murder convictions last November after a jury member during Peterson's 2004 trial committed prejudicial misconduct. The juror, Rochelle Neese, allegedly failed to disclose that she had obtained a restraining order against her boyfriend's former girlfriend in the year 2000 for harassment. She was pregnant at the time of the restraining order, but she denied any involvement in any crime-related incidents when asked during the jury screening. When jurors were asked if they were ever victims of crime or involved in a lawsuit, Rochelle answered no to both. Juror number 7 committed prejudicial misconduct by not disclosing her prior involvement with other legal proceedings, including but not limited to being the victim of a crime. According to Peterson's attorney, Neese worked hard to get on the jury, the Los Angeles Times reported. She reportedly claimed that she was willing to serve despite her employer telling her that she wouldn't be paid for her time that she missed work. Neese said that she didn't intend to be dishonest on the questionnaire and that she filled it in honestly and truthfully. Meanwhile, a woman Peterson was dating while married, Amber Fry, who was a key witness during his murder trial, has reportedly said that she's prepared to come back and testify against him again. That's interesting. So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. What do you think that's going to be? I wonder. Let me see if you... Yes. Thoughts on that? You have thoughts on that? What do you think that's going to come back? Play out of control. Hi LMNW. Hi 61. Barb Olson. Kevin. Maybe the ones doing the bullying need to be prosecuted. Yeah, they should be, Barb. They need to be prosecuted, don't they? That's exactly what we're saying. That's what the new laws would do. They need to be prosecuted, of course. And that's what her family's fighting for. That's what every, one that's fighting the cyberbullying is fighting for them to be prosecuted. Taylor says, Rochelle Neese was cocky, unprofessional after the trial. I didn't like her even then. I figured she'd be the reason he gets a new trial. Grrr. Yeah. That'll be something, right? Hi, Juanita, sorry. None of that BS matters. Scott was guilty no matter what jurors or anyone else says. That is the only question, and there is only one answer. He did it. I agree, Juanita. I agree.
I agree 100% too. I can hardly look at him in the picture. I'm with you there.
He was
Yeah.
a creep right from the start.
What is he using to get out of prison? There is no new evidence. Yeah, they're going to say that again. It's like what they're saying in this other case that once they found him, it was they didn't want to look at anybody else. So that's what they're saying, that there was a robbery in the area and they didn't look at it. But it's ridiculous. It's such ridiculousness.
It is.
I mean, he was looking up wasn't he looking up weather conditions
Yeah.
and
Yep.
tide and all this stuff, for the area where she was found, where he was?
Yep.
Who else
Yeah.
could it have been? She was found where he was, right?
Well,
Right.
well,
Find himself after.
she was in the bay. I mean, but she had washed up.
But he went fishing over there, and it was still quite a drive, So
Right.
who else? I just don't know who else it would be. This just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why did he disguise himself?
Yeah, right, with the blonde hair, and he's telling Amber that his wife is gone or missing or lost, whatever the heck he used. Lost, I think is what he said. Or
And lying to Amber Fry, saying he was wearing hair. And he was
right, in Paris, and he's at a vigil. Yeah, right, exactly.
I remember that. It was a
Yeah.
long time ago, but I remember it.
Right, and then, I mean,
The tides for that day, right, Robbie Bob?
looking up currents in the area. Yeah, absolutely. And then he had that boat that he bought and to go, fishing on Christmas Eve.
I think he's where he belongs, in my opinion.
Me too.
Said he went to go golfing at first. Yeah,
Right.
I think they put on a great case.
And after all these years, it just makes no sense.
Yeah, to do it, I don't understand. Yeah. Let me see here. It's his sister-in-law that's really championing, and she went back and became a lawyer. With the whole thing, it's crazy.
If you didn't want to be married, just walk away.
Yeah. Let's see. Here, let's see what's going on in this. And there's set case facts. So here's what they're saying. Let's see. So here's what they say on their site. The media exposure generated when Lacey went missing was something never seen before. The media was a powerful force and much wrong information was disseminated. In an effort to be first, fact-checking was no longer a luxury that most of the television and internet news markets cared about. The word alleged did not apply to Scott. They had a responsibility to communicate to the public what was going on in the courtroom, and most of them went for ratings instead of truth. Between the police, the prosecution, and the media, misinformation about this case was widespread. The featured fact articles below address many of the misconceptions surrounding the case. Everything we've written has been taken from court documents and evidence submitted in court. As you will read through the articles, we know the truth will become clear that Scott did not murder Lacey and Connor. Thank you for your time and listening to read what we have to say. Let's see what they're telling us is truth about. What do they tell us to look at? The featured fact articles. Let's see, opportunity. Okay, let's see what this says. We cannot address all the other facts of this case until we first address where Lacey and Connor's bodies were found. No matter how many facts we feature that point towards Scott's innocence, the question will always be asked, but what about the bodies? The following quotes from jurors show how critical the topic is. Juror number 1, Greg Baradas, said on a Larry King Live on December 14, 2004, "There's no bodies. It don't work. I spoke yesterday and I explained that if these bodies had been found anywhere else other than San Francisco Bay, and for that matter, right there where Scott Peterson had described he had been fishing on Christmas Eve, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Juror number 9, Julie Zanartu, on Hannity and Combs, was it with guest host Beckel on March 17, 2005. The guest host said, "What was the single most important piece of evidence that made you finally decide that he was guilty?" And the juror answered, "Exactly where he was fishing and where the bodies turned up. That was the bottom line." Juror 8, John Guaniasso, on Larry King on March 16th, 2005. Larry said, "What, if anything, was the determining factor in this case, John?" And John said, "It probably is the most obvious, and that is where the bodies washed up. I can personally say for myself, if they would have never washed up, I could never have convicted Scott Peterson." The amount of misinterpretation in regards to this topic remains somewhat of a mystery to our family. When Lacey went missing on December 24th, we were alarmed to hear the police announce Scott's alibi to the public within 24 hours. We didn't know where Lacey was, who had her, or what their intent was. Within 2 days of Lacey's disappearance, Scott's alibi had been so widely publicized that while we had great hope that Lacey would be coming home, a small part of us feared that if someone had the intent to kill Lacey, they were being told right where to put her body. Oh boy, isn't that convenient? By December 28th, both the Modesto police and the media were at the Berkeley Marina. Water searches of the San Francisco Bay began by December 30th. The search teams included the Coast Guard, the Navy, agencies from at least 4 different counties, the FBI dogs trained to smell the surface of the water for gases being emitted from decomposing bodies, in excess of 200 side-scan sonar searches, a robotic vehicle that drove along the bottom of the water, scuba divers, helicopters. The 26 search days of the shallow waters turned up nothing. Almost 4 months after Lacey disappeared, Lacey and Connor were found by pedestrians on the shores of the San Francisco Bay. Before their bodies were positively identified, our family was contemplating that our worst fears may have come true, that Lacey and Connor may be dead, and if so, someone had placed their bodies where Scott had been the day she went missing. With their bodies being found at the bay where Scott was, the police had probable cause to arrest him. Scott's arrest, the jury verdict, and the prosecution's ever-changing theories hinged on one thing, that Lacey and baby Connor were eventually found in the vicinity of where Scott had been the day she disappeared. What was so obvious to our family seemed to evade some of the most sought-after legal minds on television. These brilliant legal minds deduced that Scott must be guilty because there was no other logical explanation for how Lacey and Connor could have been found at the bay, unless Scott put them there. They scoffed at the idea that someone would plan to kill Lacey and frame Scott, and they found it highly unlikely that if Lacey was a random victim of murder, that she would be coincidentally disposed of where her husband was fishing that day. The theories seem to focus on the assumption that Lacey had been murdered on December 24th and that her body disposed of the same day. Had so much time gone by that no one remembered how quickly Scott's alibi had been publicized? Why were people assuming that she had been murdered on Christmas Eve? Why were people assuming that her body was put in the bay on Christmas Eve? No one in our family felt it was likely that someone premeditated Lacey's murder with the intent to frame Scott. We also did not think it likely that someone had murdered her on Christmas Eve and coincidentally drove to the bay to dump her body. We saw other, more logical options, but these seemed to escape discussion. What was obvious to our family and friends was confirmed by countless others. One individual wrote our family and commented that when he heard of Scott's Christmas Eve location publicized on the TV, he thought to himself, that guy doesn't stand a chance now. Others yet called the Modesto police tip line and indicated that publicizing Scott's whereabouts could result in the perpetrators dumping her body there in an effort to frame him. The prosecution, in their rebuttal closing argument, argued that Lacey would have had to been alive for a day for someone to take advantage of knowing Scott's alibi and dumping her in the bay. Is there some evidence that she was not alive December 25th? If she was killed on December 24th, is it not possible that her body could have been moved to the bay? The prosecution also asked, who would drive 90 miles to dump a body? Like it made total sense for Scott to drive 90 miles, but not anyone else? Well, we would ask, would the sales manager of a fertilizer company who knew the farmland of the Central Valley like the back of his hand drive 90 miles to the busiest marina on the San Francisco Bay where he'd never been before to dump his pregnant wife's body out of a boat he'd never had in the water before in broad daylight? Or would someone have the chance to get away with murder, drive 90 miles or so to do it? The San Jose Mercury News reported on December 14, 2004, that the juror Greg Baratalis tried to grasp the defense theory that Peterson was framed, but he couldn't believe that anyone would have gone through so much trouble to hide her body. Why is this so unbelievable? If someone is evil enough to commit murder, wouldn't they be evil enough to go through the trouble of blaming someone else? Is that the real problem, that it's unbelievable? Well, we'd have to agree that the last 3 years have been quite unbelievable. But why is it easier to believe that a man with no history of violence, much less anger, is capable of murdering his wife and unborn son and leaving no evidence other than it is to believe that Lacey was abducted and murdered? Statistically, it is not likely that 1, someone with no history of anger or violence would commit this type of crime, and 2, it is not statistically likely that someone could commit this crime and leave no evidence in the home, the yard, the truck, the boat, the warehouse, or on himself, and to do so in broad daylight with no eyewitnesses. What are the chances that both of these things could happen in the same crime? If you are one to focus on statistics, Scott would be the least likely subject. There is much evidence associated with Lacey and Connor's bodies that suggests Scott is innocent, but we will address that in later issues. The one thing we want to point out in this issue is that Lacey was alive Christmas Eve morning and was found dead on the shoreline on April 14th. Where she was in between those dates and how she and Connor got where they were is unknown. The medical examiner, Dr. Peterson, estimated that she had been dead months, placing Lacey's time of death between December 24th, 2002 and February 2003. The search for Lacey's body in the San Francisco Bay did not result in the bay being secured as a crime scene. Countless people were free to come and go from the bay at all hours of the day and night. Meanwhile, Scott's alibi and the fact that the bay was being searched and publicized almost daily, that was ample opportunity to place the bodies in the water along the shoreline. So we submit to you, is it a fact that someone other than Scott had the opportunity to put Lacey and baby Connor's body where they were? It is a fact that someone other than Scott had the opportunity to put Lacey and baby Connor's body where they were. Okay, what do you guys think of that? You think that when they released Scott's alibi, that it gave someone the chance to frame Scott? Juanita says, Scott likely thought there would be no other people would be at the bay on that rough, cold day. Huh. What's going on with Scooter? Hypoglycemic.
She's okay. She said she's going to come up in a little bit. She just feels a little shaky because her blood sugar is low.
Okay.
That's all.
Go have some grapes, Scooter, or something. Many family annihilators hadn't ever been violent before either. Correct, Juanita. Look at Chris Watts, right? Yeah. Well, nobody saw anyone else put her body in that bay either. Okay, yeah. His behavior was so crazy afterwards. Correct, Kevin. Yes. I see that. Let's see what else we can, what else are they looking to, with their fact documents, you know. So let's see. Okay, here's their challenge. Let's see. Through our featured fact articles, we have been correcting misinformation that has been disseminated for over 3 years, one issue at a time. We realize that we are literally trying to prove Scott is innocent. The legal standard in our country is that the prosecution should have to prove that Scott is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. According to the prosecution, Lacey was murdered by Scott sometime after 8:30 on the 23rd. You can see by the following statement from prosecutor Rick DeStasso's closing argument, they're not quite sure when. And I quote, I can't tell you when he did it. I can't tell you if he did it at night. I can't tell you if he did it in the morning. I'm not going to try to convince you of something that I can't prove. I don't have to prove that to you. I only have to prove that he did it. The prosecution never explained when Scott killed Lacey, and no one, including the prosecution, has ever given a series of events that fits the circumstances and explains how Scott could have killed Lacey. We have stood by Scott and maintained his innocence, not because he is family, not because we hope he is innocent, and not because we believe he is innocent, but because we know he is innocent. There have been plenty of talk about Scott's behavior, but not any talk about how exactly Scott could have carried out this crime. If it doesn't fit the circumstances, it is not true. Our challenge is for those of you who believe Scott is guilty to put together a timeline of how this crime was carried out. Tell us how Scott could have committed this crime with a series of events that fits the circumstances. Based on our featured fact, Scott's timeline, if you have not read this article, we strongly suggest that you do before accepting this challenge. We have constructed an outline of factual events that took place in the 24 hours before Lacey was reported missing. If you think Scott is guilty, or if you're just up for the challenge, please construct a timeline with a series of events that proves that he was able to perform all that would be entailed in committing the crime. Below the outline, we have listed a number of topics that must be addressed. The topics listed contain frank, blunt questions and comments challenging the assertion that Scott killed Lacey. We do not do this lightly. It is painful for us to speculate in what manner Lacey's life was taken. Lacey was a member of our family. She was not only a wife to Scott, she was a daughter-in-law, sister-in-law, and aunt to us. We knew her and loved her. Connor was his son, a grandson, nephew, and cousin that we did not get to meet. So here's their timeline. 8:30 p.m. Lacey is on the phone with her mother, and that's the last known person to speak with her other than Scott. December 24th, 5 a.m. Both Scott and Lacey's cars are in the driveway per the neighbor, Susan Medina. 8:40 to 8:45 a.m. the computer is being used at the Peterson home. At 9:39 a.m., a friend, Kristen Reed, sees Scott's truck in the driveway. At 9:48 a.m., Scott is watching Martha Stewart. 10:08 a.m., Scott is on his cell phone somewhere between his home and the warehouse. Travel time from home and the warehouse is approximately 9 minutes. At 10:30 to 10:56, Scott is actively logged into his computer at the warehouse. At 12:54, Scott purchases a ticket from the parking machine at the Berkeley Marina. Travel time from Scott's warehouse to the Berkeley Marina is approximately 1 hour and 36 minutes. At 2:12 p.m., approximate time that Scott leaves the Berkeley Marina per cell phone records. At 3:25 p.m., there's a Chevron, that's a gas, purchase in Livermore. At 5:17 p.m., Scott calls Lacey's mom to see if she is at their house helping prepare dinner, and that's per her mother's testimony. Below is a list of 20 topics that need to be addressed in your timeline. If you read through the topics and cannot give an explanation or do not understand what is being asked, we assert you do not have enough information to say Scott is guilty. 1. Explain why Scott is spontaneously committing to things at the salon on the evening of December 23rd. If he had plans to murder his wife that evening, one would think he would be too preoccupied with his plans to make the offers. Scott invited his sister-in-law, Amy, over for pizza to their home that evening. She declined only because she already had plans with a friend. Scott offered to pick up a gift basket for Lacey and Amy's grandpa the next day. 2. Explain why and how Scott killed Lacey. Why is there no physical evidence of the murder? No blood, no struggle, no cadaver scent? Why did no one see anything or hear anything? 3. When Lacey's body was recovered, there was a piece of duct tape stuck to her pants. Explain why and how the duct tape got on Lacey's pants. Where did the duct tape come from? Why was it necessary? 4. Explain how and why Scott cleaned up all the crime scenes without leaving any evidence of a murder or cleaning up. What cleanup was required at the house, in the truck, at the warehouse, in the boat? What needed to be disposed of, and where was it disposed? When did he clean up? What did he clean up with? Why would he tell the police that he filled the mop bucket for Lacey if he had really filled it for himself to clean up? After all, he emptied it as well. He could have never mentioned the mop or buckets, and no one would have thought twice about how clean the floor was because the maid was there the day before. Why is there no cadaver scent at the house? Why is there no cadaver scent in the truck? Why is there no cadaver scent in the warehouse? Why is there no cadaver scent in the boat? Why is there no cadaver scent in the toolbox? Why is there no smell of bleach? Contrary to media reports and made-for-TV movies, there was no smell of bleach in the home. All officers on the scene that evening of December 24th testified there was no bleach smell in the home. Explain who was on the computer at the house from 8:40 to 8:45. If it was Lacey, did Scott kill her after 8:45? If it was not Lacey, where was she? If it was Scott on the computer at home, why was he on the computer? Was he pretending to be Lacey because he knew the police would check the computers? Why didn't he tell the police? Lacey was on the computer this morning. If Scott was just on the computer, had already killed Lacey, he would check the weather in San Jose. Why would the weather matter? As he would have had no chance at that point except to dump her body. No choice. 6. Explain why the curling iron is in the bathroom counter with the cord stretched towards the outlet, and explain why the bench is in front of the mirror. And they say see the photo below. So here they're showing this photo. You make it bigger. Okay, let's see here. It says, did Scott stage the curling iron and bench in the bathroom? When did he stage them? If he staged it, why wouldn't he point it out to the police? Did he know the police were going to photograph his house? If he staged it, the only person he mentioned it to was Sharon Rocha. That the curling iron and the bench were out when the police arrived. He just mentions how cute Lacey looked sitting on her bench, curling her hair the way Amy showed her the night before. Prosecutor Rick DeStasso argued in his rebuttal closed that the curling iron was out because Lacey took it to the salon. Amy never testified to this, but if she had, why is the cord not wrapped around it? 7. Explain why Scott is watching Martha Stewart on television. 8. Explain why Lacey was found in clothing as though she just got up and got dressed. Keep in mind that the clothes Lacey was wearing the evening of December 23rd were found in the home. Also keep in mind that the blue pajamas that Scott and Lacey wore the night of the 23rd is at the top of the hamper. Below is a photo of Lacey in Scott's pajama pants. Why would Scott say he last saw Lacey in black pants and a white shirt? Hold on. If he had killed her and knew she was wearing khaki capris. Explain why Mackenzie the dog was found outside. Hold on. Just a little bit. Mackenzie the dog was found outside of the backyard with his leash on. Karen Service, the neighbor next door, stated that Mackenzie would get out of the yard sometimes. Is that all that happened? Why put the leash on Mackenzie? If Scott put the leash on Mackenzie to stage that Lacey went for a walk, was he hoping someone would find Mackenzie and confirm his story? If Scott put Mackenzie outside with her leash on to go with the she was going to go walk the dog, then why did he take the leash off of Mackenzie when he got home? Why didn't he just come home and immediately start a search for his missing wife, who was walking the dog? Act. Did Scott drop off Mackenzie somewhere? Did Mackenzie follow Scott's truck down the street? Did Mackenzie remain standing in the street right in front of their house for over 10 minutes until Karen's service estimates she found him? Could Karen be mistaken about what time she put Mackenzie back in the yard? Did she put the dog back earlier or later? Karen testified that Scott and Lacey's gate was open when she put Mackenzie back. Did Scott release Mackenzie into the neighborhood and then leave the gate open? Scott found out that Karen had put Mackenzie back in the yard the evening of December 24th when she returned his phone call. Scott immediately handed his cell phone to a police officer to talk with Karen. This was the first information they were getting that might help pinpoint where Lacey disappeared. If Scott had put the leash on Mackenzie and Karen was the culmination of his well thought out plan, why did Scott immediately hand his phone to the police without first finding out what else she had seen? Karen initially estimated putting Mackenzie back in the yard around 10:30 a.m. Over the next couple days, reports of Lacey walking the dog started coming in. If Scott had killed Lacey, why then did he call Karen back and implore her to see if she could pinpoint a more accurate time as to when coming in? If Scott had killed Lacey, why didn't he? Okay. As to when she walked the dog. Why would Scott tell police that Mackenzie is protective of Lacey if his plan is to tell everyone she was abducted while walking the dog? Where was Mackenzie when Scott was loading the body? Take into account the door to the house and the gate would have to be open. Did Scott take the time to secure Mackenzie while loading the body, or was Mackenzie running around in and out of the house and the backyard? Explain how and when Scott loaded her body into his truck. Did he load her in the toolbox or the bed? She was loaded into the bed of the truck. If she was loaded into the bed of the truck, were the umbrellas loaded on top of her? If she was loaded into the toolbox, how did she fit? With rigor mortis setting in, the police found many items in the toolbox the evening on the 24th. Were these items while Lacey was in? Where were these items when Lacey was in the toolbox? The prosecution claimed that Lacey was wrapped in a tarp. There were umbrellas in the bed of Scott's truck. Hold on a minute. At the end of the day, wrapped in a tarp. Is this the same tarp? Why would he need to cover her body with umbrellas if she was wrapped in the tarp? How long would it take him to load her body into the truck? Explain why Scott is checking his voicemail while he drives to the warehouse. Shouldn't Scott be watching the body in the back of the truck? Make sure the tarp is not flapping around? Wouldn't he be watching his surroundings to make sure no one sees anything? If he had released Mackenzie into the neighborhood, maybe he's watching what the dog is doing. 12. Explain how long it would take to transfer her body from the truck to the boat. When did Scott transfer her body from the truck to the boat? Before or after he used the computer? That would have to be done with the warehouse door open. There was not enough room in the warehouse to back his truck in and be hidden from view. The warehouse diagram below shows Scott's boat in the lower right-hand corner. Let's see. Okay. If she was in the toolbox, did Scott climb over the umbrellas to take her out of the toolbox and load her onto the boat, or did he unload the umbrellas, remove her body, and then put the umbrellas back in his truck, The umbrellas are still in Scott's truck at the end of the day. Why is there no skin, tissue, or blood in any of these places? Why is there no cadaver scent on the boat or the warehouse? Where did Scott put her in the boat? Between the seats? Across the seats? How did he deal with the rigor mortis? Okay. Here's another picture. That's the inside of Scott's boat. Explain why Scott is on his computer looking up how to assemble a mortiser and checking emails if he has multiple crime scenes to clean up and a body to dump. Where is Lacey's body while he's on the computer? Was she in the back of the truck in the parking lot while he was on the computer? Or was her body already in the boat? Explain when Scott assembled the mortiser. If he assembled the mortiser that morning, was Lacey's body laying there? If he assembled it sooner, why did he look up instructions on how to assemble it that morning? Explain whether or not Scott weighed down Lacey's body. If he did, what did he attach? When did he attach the weights or anchors? What did he attach the weights with? If she was wrapped in a tarp at the house, did he unwrap her to put the weights on her and then wrap her up again? Why is there no skin or tissue? Hold on a minute. Tissue or blood anywhere. If she was weighed down, would her body stay right where he dumped it in the shallow water? Why did he make the weights and anchors? If he made them with concrete, they would have to set up. If the concrete's on the flat side, on the flatbed trailer at a warehouse is left over from Scott making anchors to weigh down his dead wife's body, why didn't he clean up the concrete? If he made anchors to weigh down Lacey's body, why would he make an extra one to be his boat anchor and show his MO to the police? If he did not weigh her down, why was she not found sooner? How much weight is required to keep a 150-pound decomposing body submerged? What was the total combined weight of Lacey and the weights? Explain how long it took Scott to drive to the Berkeley Marina. The speed limit while pulling a trailer is 55 miles per hour. Did he exceed the speed limit while driving to Berkeley Marina with his wife's dead body in the boat? Was Lacey's body in the boat while driving to the marina, or did he leave her in the truck? If he was driving with the boat cover on, how long did it take to affix it so that it wouldn't come off the freeway? There are loops on the boat cover, but no hardware or rope as part of the cover. What did he use to affix the boat cover? Would the boat cover stay on while driving on the freeway? Bruce Peterson testified that the cover was for use while storing the boat, not towing the boat. Hold on a minute. Below is a picture of Scott's boat with the cover. Explain why Scott would go to the busiest marina on the San Francisco Bay, why he would go somewhere he had never been before, and why he would use a boat he had never had in the water before, and why he would go at high noon on a holiday to a recreational area to dump Lacey's body. Explain why Scott would drive 90 miles to dump her body, then come home and tell the police right where he was. Explain why Scott would dump Lacey's body in a shallow area. Explain how Scott dumped her body weighed down out of the boat without the boat capsizing. How long did it take to dump her body out of the boat? How did rigor mortis affect Scott's ability to dump her out of the boat? How long did it take to motor to Brooks Island and back? Explain why the police, FBI, Navy, Coast Guard, Department of Justice, and the Sheriff's Department never found her body even though they started searching on December 27th. If she was weighed down, why wouldn't she be right where he left her 3 days later? When did they start to search? If he didn't use enough weight, why wouldn't she float to the surface? The search teams used trained water dogs to sniff the surface of the water for gases that decomposing bodies were there. Why didn't these dogs pick up the scent of the decomposing body, especially in such shallow water? If he dumped her in such shallow water, why was she not found? Okay. 20 says Nancy Grace speculates that Scott must have made 2 trips to the marina. The quote below was made from the Larry King Live that aired June 15th of 2004. Nancy Grace says, I think given what we know right now, they'll have to present a 2 trip to the bay because when he went to go fishing in the afternoon, believe you me, if he is in fact guilty, he did not dispose of Lacey's body at that time in plain view in the middle of the day. Now, another thing we were talking about earlier about what's the strongest evidence, I say it's the timeline. We have Scott Peterson based on the triangulation of cell phone records and cell phone towers in his neighborhood at 10:18, at 10:08, at 10:08. At 10:18, the neighbor finds the dog running free with a muddy leash. He's narrowed it down to 10 minutes for an unknown assailant to grab his wife, and he happens to be in the neighborhood at the same time, and I think they go on that 2-day trip to the bay. If you believe he took 2 trips, when did he make the first one? Why would he make the second trip? There are many additional topics that point to Scott's innocence that need explanation, including the conditions of Lacey and Connor's bodies when they were found. We have not included these issues, but we will look at them at a later date. Hold on. Okay. Wow. All right. Let's see what the chat is saying. What is the chat saying? Okay, let's see. Another copy. Witnesses saw him at the marina, so he couldn't do anything about that. So, Juanita, do you have the ability to solve all of that for them? Hi, Annie B. How are you? Hi, Deborah B. Okay, so I don't know. I mean, they're going crazy, huh? Let's see what else they have. Imagine being Janie Peterson. Hi, Shauna. How are you? And spending 3/4 of your life trying to convince the public that your brother-in-law isn't a murderer. And why is she so invested in it? Does she have children? Is she so invested in it that she doesn't want her children to, have to have their uncle as a murderer? Is that why? Is that why she's so invested in it? I don't know. Juanita says, maybe he didn't take her body to the boat, to the marina, but in the truck. He waited till the coast was clear and then transferred her to the boat. Yeah. Greta popped in to say hi from sunny Malta. Oh, hope you're having a good time. Hi, Oliver. Scott would go watch the police trying to find her body in the bay several times in different vehicles. Let's see what else. Okay, so when Lacey went missing on December 24th, she was 33 weeks pregnant, just over 7.5 months. Hold on, let me just do this. You couldn't find a family member or friend who thought that Scott was involved in her disappearance. Lacey's entire family, Scott's entire family, and all Scott and Lacey's friends told the police and media that Scott was excited about becoming a father. Scott's friend, Greg Reed, testified in court how excited Scott was to become a father, how they attended Lamaze classes together, and how Greg and Scott looked through the Cabela's catalog together and picked out baby clothing for their son. Scott's friend, Guy Maligi, told the media how Scott has spent many hours preparing the nursery. Neighbor Karen Service told police that both Scott and Lacey were excited about the pregnancy and the upcoming baby. Another neighbor, Susan Medina, first met Scott in December 2002 when he gave her a ride to work because she had a flat tire. She testified that she and Scott discussed Lacey's pregnancy and who her doctor was. Scott and Lacey's maid, Margarita Nava, told the police that Scott and Lacey were excited about the baby and the nursery was all prepared. Scott had painted the nursery in Connor's dresser, had assembled the crib, and also made the table shown in the photo below to match one Lacey had seen in a catalog. Scott went with Lacey to her OBGYN appointment on December 23, 2002. Scott and Lacey had planned this pregnancy. They were excited to become parents, and Scott was an involved father-to-be. On January 13th, 2003, Scott gave notice to the landlord for the Trade Corp warehouse. Scott indicated in his notice to vacate that he would be out of the warehouse by February 12th. Scott made arrangements for the Trade Corp product to be warehoused at a distribution center, and he rented a storage unit on January 27th to store all the office equipment, furniture, and some personal items from the warehouse. Scott was seen loading boxes into the storage facility on February 8th. Below is a photo of the storage facility that was taken during the February 18th search warrant. Okay, as you can see from the photo, the storage unit is quite full. Scott and Lacey's home did not have a garage, so the remaining items from the warehouse just did not fit in the storage unit ended up at their house. These items included a futon sofa and 3 office chairs. The futon sofa ended up in their second bedroom, and the office chairs ended up in the nursery. The first photo shows the second bedroom during the 12/26/2002 search warrant. The second photo shows the second bedroom with the futon, in it during the second search warrant on 2/18/2003. The photos show that the bed had been removed from the second bedroom and the futon sofa had been put where the bed was. The next 2 photos show the view from the front window of the house. The first photo is from the first search warrant and shows a clearer view into the house through the front window. The second photo from the February search warrant shows that the mattresses from the second bedroom have been propped up in the front window, blocking the view of the onlookers into the house. Okay. The next photo shows the condition of the nursery during the February search warrant. The chairs from Scott's office have been rolled into the nursery, and on top of the rocking chair is the red and blue bedding from the second bedroom. And someone gave a super chat. Thank you, Gail B, for the super chat. Thank you. Okay. Prior to moving out of the warehouse, Scott had conducted 4 media interviews. The first interview was with Diane Sawyer. The other interviews were with Ted Rollins, Gloria Gomez, and Jody Hernandez. Scott stated that regarding the nursery in 2 of those interviews, the door is closed until there is someone to go in there. That's from the Diane Sawyer interview. Then the next one. The door is closed. I can't look. You know, in that door, from the Ted Rollins. And then the next one is subsequent to these interviews, Scott brought the items home from the warehouse that did not fit in the storage unit. The 3 office chairs and some bedding were placed in the nursery. In court documents filed on 2/24/2004, the prosecution argued that these media statements were lies, stating the following. The defendant states that he hasn't been able to go into the room where Connor's nursery was set up. The door is closed until there's someone to go in there. That statement was obviously designed to convey the impression that he so loved his unborn child that he couldn't even enter the baby's room. This was not true. When the police served a search warrant at his home on February 18, 2003, the defendant had turned the nursery into a storage room. This prompted the following quote from the San Francisco Chronicle, Article 22404. Talking to Sawyer, Peterson painted himself as a father in mourning, unable to bring himself to enter his unborn son's nursery more than a month after Lacey disappeared. The door is closed until there is someone to go in there, he told Sawyer. But prosecutors say that when police searched Peterson's home on February 18, 2003, he had converted the baby's room, decorated in a nautical theme, into a storage room. A little over 3 months later, Prosecutor DeStasso said the following in his opening statement on June 1st, 2004. There is a rented storage unit. You can click through there. Some of the stuff that he had in there, the shop, the trash can, was found in the rented storage unit. It's just full of junk, mail, and other miscellaneous papers and stuff. Also had a small album that contained wedding pictures of Scott and Lacey. Some differences between the police went to the house on the 18th. You can still see the nursery that is basically being used as a storage room. It got a number of items in there, some leather chairs, one in the right-hand corner next to the 3 is 2 of the other ones that are there. The trash can he referred to in the picture, and on July 20th, 2004, Detective House testified about the wedding photos in the trash can. Mark Garrigo said, okay, did it look like the items were then taken and put in some kind of receptacle and then placed in a storage unit? Richard House said, yes, it did. Garrigo said, in order to store them? Richard House said, that's what it looked like. Mark Garrigo said, okay, it didn't look like anybody was throwing away the photos, did it? Richard House said, I don't think so. You have the prosecutor suggesting in his opening statement that Scott threw away their wedding photos. And then you have a detective on the stand stating that he did not think the wedding photos had been thrown away and that it appeared they had just been packed in the trash can for storage. This is the case when prosecutorial pundit Jim Hammer actually got it right in his comment that he made in the Oakland Tribune on July 21st, where he said, the wastebasket is just like the anchor and the pitcher. Garrigos just explained it away, said Jim Hammer, referring to other items that the prosecution introduced earlier in the trial. If you can't convince your own detective about your theory, how do you convince the jury? Unfortunately, the other media quotes and headlines included the following. Brian Anderson's July 20th, 2004 article in the Contra Costa Times was titled, Peterson quickly turned Connor's room into storage area. Another one by Ted Rollins says, Russ Camp, who was a bit hostile at times on the stands, Garrigos testified that the nursery was used as a bit of a storage room. Nancy Grace reported and said that getting rid of Connor's nursery furniture and that Connor's nursery looked like an office warehouse storage facility. The prosecution again brought up the nursery where Detective Grogan testified on September 21st, 2004. His testimony suggested that Scott lied about entering the nursery and that there were some chairs and that there were a lot of items stored in the nursery. 3 chairs and bedding hardly constitute some chairs and a lot of items. And the nursery certainly does not look like a storage room. Just to review, this is how Scott stores stuff. Interesting. Huh? Did that. To say that Scott lied during his media interviews about going into the nursery is inaccurate. His statements were true at the time, very legitimate comments to be made by a man who missed his wife and his unborn child. The chairs and bedding had not been moved into the nursery at the time Scott did the media interviews. When the storage unit filled up, Scott had to bring a few things to his home. He did not disassemble the nursery. He did not pack up Connor's toys and clothes. Some bedding was placed in the rocking chair and 3 chairs were placed into the room. It's hard to believe that this was even brought up in the murder trial. Basically, the prosecution's argument was 7 weeks after a pregnant woman goes missing, her husband rolls 3 chairs into a room he previously said he doesn't go into. That's evidence? What do you guys think? That photo is so sad. Nicole, who the hell thinks? Oh, milk with pizza. Well, what do you think? Shana says, put a sock in it, Janie. So, is that convincing anyone that thinks that Scott's guilty, that he might be innocent? Is that even, just let me know, really truthfully, is it making you even say, well, let me think about it, maybe she's got some points here? Maybe. Absolutely not. Still guilty, Julie W. says, okay. Guilty, Nicole says. Chris Ree, I'm pretty sure this is Chris Ree. I don't know who Chris Deep is. Chris Ree, is that you?
No, it's just me.
Oh, is that you there with the plant?
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting to change my.
Oh, okay, because no, I wasn't sure if
Green
Chris
bag.
Ree spelled her name wrong. Hey, how you doing? Do you have
I need
anything?
you to distract me. I've like stabbed myself, like literally stabbed myself with these like scissors. They're like sort of like about 3-inch scissors, and they've got these really sharp. But they were just on the couch,
Yeah.
and
Over this?
listen to my. I should listen to my mum because like she's always, don't throw yourself on the couch when you sit down. And I sat down and just like kind of threw myself on the couch, and the scissors were there, and they literally just like went really deep into my leg.
Oh gosh. And you're bleeding?
Yeah, I haven't looked at it yet because it like just hurts so much. I
Well,
just thought,
be careful. It's not near the femoral artery, is it?
It's kind of like halfway between my knee and my hip, like halfway down my leg, but it's on the back of my leg.
Roberty Bob, what is weird that he did this stuff afterwards that you just don't do until you know what happened to your wife and baby. He knew Lacey and Connor were not coming back. Absolutely.
Are you on the live?
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
You didn't know?
Okay. No.
No, but are you okay?
I only hurts all the pains there.
Well, just make sure it stops bleeding, because if it doesn't stop bleeding, then you might have to.
Feels like I wet my pants.
Yeah, well, just be careful. Check it, because
It hurts too much.
put pressure on it. Put pressure on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta put pressure on it.
Put pressure on. All right, like if you don't stop bleeding, I'm gonna chop you off.
Yeah. No, just put like gauze pad, and something, and put pressure.
Not that pressure.
Where, when he was on the phone in New Year's Eve with Amber, was the final straw. Yeah. Right. Barb says, I wonder what the outcome would have been if Amber Fry did not contact the police. I don't know. I mean, if she
What does that
didn't,
mean? So familiar.
if she didn't
Have you
contact
had
the
your tetanus
police,
cats?
Scott Peterson.
Oh yeah, let's talk about him. That'll cheer me out. Why didn't we kill him when we had a chance?
Yeah, he's
the
going
way
for
he
other.
lied with such ease was disturbing. Yeah, and I mean, I remember just being in the very beginning, I was like, whoa, something was suspect, but her parents, just had no qualms in the beginning. They said, oh, no, he's, fine. And I remember just watching it thinking, how could he? No, he's got something to do with it.
Hasn't her sister been, like, while he's been in jail and stuff, been advocating for him?
No, that's his sister-in-law.
His
Janie.
sister-in-law.
Janie went back to and got her, she got her law degree.
If I thought someone killed my sister, there is no way in hell.
No, it's not. It's not her sister. It's his sister-in-law. His brother's wife.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Robbie Bob.
Yeah.
That made Lacey's parents believe he was even guiltier.
Yeah, he reminds me.
He was kind of like the Chris Watts 1.0. He had to get rid of a baby and a wife because of the mistress.
And if the dogs could tell stories.
Yes, it is High 61. See, it's the one I got in Cracker Barrel on the member live. We had a member live, and I got it at Cracker Barrel.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Do you remember those phone calls that on New Year's Eve to
Right, where he said he was in Paris, and yeah.
Yeah.
pretty good liar. I'm just saying.
But she went on and dobbed him in though. Like she set up
Right.
the phone entrapments.
I'm just saying that
Yeah.
like he could lie with such ease like to her, and those were pretty elaborate lies that he was making up.
Let's see. It says this article contains trial quotes that discuss Scott's demeanor, his cooperation with the police, and his truthfulness the night Lacey went missing. These quotes from the prosecution witnesses show that the public perception that Scott was emotionless and uncooperative and constantly lying to the police were inaccurate. Additional trial quotes show the police's immediate assumption that Scott was guilty, the lack of police follow-up on sightings of Lacey, and the absence of evidence implicating Scott. Trial quotes from multiple witnesses who testified to Scott's demeanor when they spoke with or saw him on the evening of December 24th, 2002. So Officer Spurlock, they have as the first one, says, and I quote, I saw Mr. Peterson. He seemed concerned. He had a look of concern on his face. I think he maybe even had some tears in his eyes. But as far as a frantic behavior, I wouldn't claim, just frantic concern. And then Mark Garrigo said, did he appear to be upset to you? And Spurlock said, yes, I would say so. Then Officer Evers, Mark Garrigo said, when you saw that Lacey's mom, Sharon, you know Sharon is that correct? Officer Evers says, yes, I do. Garrigo says she was crying and she was very, very upset, correct? Officer Evers says that's correct, and Mark Garrigo says, Scott, when he walked up, he appeared to be very upset. Is that correct? Evers says that's correct. Garrigo says, and the other family members, you described them as just concerned, correct? Evers said yes. Detective Grogan now. Garrigo says, now, did you look at any of the interviews that Ms. Rocha had given, for example, to the Today Show on December 30th, in which she says, that Scott said, Mom, is Lacey there? Grogan says, no, I haven't seen that before. Garrigo said, did you ever look at the January 14th Today Show where she said, I knew she was missing? Grogan says, no, I have never seen that before. Garrigo says, okay, then that would have been January 14th show. Would have been 2 days before she was told about the existence of Amber Fry. Is that correct? Or the day before? Grogan says it would have been the day before, yes. Garrigo says, and that at least if the transcript's accurate, she's the one who said that she knew Lacey was missing just by the panic rising in Scott's voice, correct? Grogan says, yes, that's what it says. And then there's Amy Krigbaum, the neighbor. She says, so he was distraught. It kind of made me a little distraught, so I didn't really know how to handle the situation. So the prosecutor just also says, okay. And Amy says, I just kind of took bits and pieces of it. Didn't really know what to do. I shut the door, kind of asked Tara, help him look, or when Greg Reed, Scott's friend, DeStasso said, okay, well, let me Before I show you the report and refresh your memory, what was Mr. Peterson's, how did he sound on the message? And Greg Reed said the perfect word would be frantic. Stacy Boyer is Lacey's friend. Next up, Mark Arago says, you got a call from Scott. Approximately what time? Stacy says 5:26. Arago says, okay, you know this now because you looked at your cell phone records? Stacy says, my cell phone records? Yes. Arago says, Stacy says, didn't just pull that out? No. Okay, now you get the call at 5:26. Was he upset? And she says, yes. Lori Ellsworth, who's Lacey's friend, Lori said he had a different tone in his voice. Yes. Pat Harris, with the prosecution, said he was panicked. Wasn't he? Lori Ellsworth says, panicked, maybe. Trial quotes from multiple police officers testified to how truthful and cooperative Scott was when Lacey went missing. Detective Bercini, Garrigo said, and we don't have anywhere in there where it says I don't have a girlfriend, but we do have it in there, a number of things that went through it that I showed you, exhibits, which turned out Mr. Peterson gave you the absolute correct information. Isn't that true? And Bercini says, told me a lot of truth. Garrigo says, right. And he told you a lot of truth throughout that interview. He told you where he had been that day, correct? Bercini says, yes. Garrigo says he told you specifically what items were used for what, correct? Bercini says, yes. Mark Garrigo says he told you the timing of various things, correct? Bercini says, yes. Mark Garrigo says, okay, and as you say, he told you a lot of truth, correct? Bercini said he did. DeStasso said, and where did you put it? Excuse me, no, he said, and where did you put it? And Bercini said, my jacket pocket. DeStasso said, and you didn't tell Scott Peterson about that? Not right away, Bercini said. Prosecutor DeStasso said, and why didn't you tell him about it at that moment that you were taking the gun? Bercini said, I wanted to keep him. I wanted to keep him cooperative. I wanted him to keep talking to me, not thinking I was suspicious or I didn't want him to get defensive. Officer Spurlock, Mark Arago says, okay, he was cooperative, was he not? Spurlock says, yes, sir. Officer Evers, Prosecutor DeStasso said, and what the defendant was, how would you describe him at that point? Cooperative, uncooperative? Evers said, he was cooperative. DeStasso said, he agreed to let you into the warehouse. Yes, Evers said. Agent Mansfield, Mark Arago said, the interview took place. This would be on Christmas Day? Mansfield said, yes, it would. Garrigo said, approximately what time? Approximately 1:30 in the afternoon, Mansfield said. Garrigo says, in the afternoon? Mansfield says, yes. Garrigo says, and he voluntarily came to the, was this at the Modesto Police Department? Mansfield said, it was at the new office of the Modesto Police Department, yes. Garrigo said, okay, and this interview, he voluntarily came down to give this interview, correct? Mansfield said, yes, he did. Garrigo said, he wasn't under arrest. Mansfield said, no, he was not. Garrigo says, in fact, he was cooperating in terms of answering the questions. He came down there even though it was Christmas Day, even though his wife was missing at that point. And Mansfield says, very cooperative. Garrigo says, and all of this was done in the police station, roughly then between 1:30 and maybe 4 to 4:15. Mansfield said 4:15, yes. Mark Garrigo says, okay, and he was, you indicated, very cooperative throughout. Yes, he was. Detective Grogan, Mark Garrigo says, okay, sometime that same day, did Bercini go into the house and also meet up with Scott? Grogan says on the 25th. 25th, yes, that would have been in the morning prior to the interview. And when Bercini went over there, did you meet up with him? You met up with Scott? Grogan says, yes. Garrigo says, okay, and Scott at that point had informed Detective Bercini that they had already printed up thousands of flyers and they were organizing a search. Is that correct? Grogan says, I'm sorry, sir, can I look at that? Garrigo says, sure. Grogan says, just this section. Garrigo says, right. Grogan says, yes. Mark Garrigo says, okay. Now, there was, at that point, Scott Peterson had cooperated fully with both you and Detective Bercini. Is that right? Grogan says, yes. Let's see. And now these trial quotes, they say, show the immediate suspicion that was cast on Scott. Greg Reed. When he told his wife on Christmas Eve, referring to the police, they think Scott did it. Detective Broccini, Prosecutor DiStasso, said, "Were you suspicious, though, of him at that time?" Alan Broccini said yes. Unfortunate trial quote from Detective Grogan regarding following up on Lacey sightings that came in the first week she was missing. "Well, I can't say that the sightings were automatically a priority for us at the time of the events in this investigation." Trial quote explaining why someone didn't come forward who had seen Lacey in the morning of December 24th. Mark Garrigo says, "The one thing that wasn't mentioned is the reason that she was hesitant to call the police is that they were discrediting anyone who claimed that they saw Lacey, right?" Grogan says that's what this report says. Trial quote about Lacey's pants. It was falsely publicized that Lacey's body was found in the pants she was wearing the night before she went missing, which was used to cast suspicion on Scott. Amy Rocha, Lacey's sister, was looking at a catalog picture of the pants that were on Lacey's body when it was recovered. She was asked if they were the pants that Lacey was wearing in the evening before she went missing, and her response is, "Definitely not the pants." Trial quote showing information favorable to Scott being removed from a police report. The police wanted people to think that Lacey didn't know that Scott had bought a boat. A witness was found that confirmed Lacey was at the warehouse a few days before she went missing. This confirmed information Scott had told them. Unfortunately, the information about this witness was left out of Detective Broccini's report. Mark Garrigo says, "Can you tell me how a particular piece of information got excised out of your reports?" Broccini says, "I excised it." Trial quote showing the same detective secretly, illegally taking Scott's gun from Scott's truck the evening of December 24th. Garrigo says, "You didn't have permission to take it, right? I mean, specifically, you didn't have his consent. You didn't say, I'm going to go take this. You didn't have a search warrant. You just took it, right?" Broccini says, "I legally took it. That's right." "What do you mean you legally took it?" Broccini said, "I had consent to be in the truck." Consent to be in the truck doesn't give you the consent to take the property. And the judge says, "This is all argumentative. We want to know what he did. He had consent to go into the cab of the truck. He saw the weapon. He took it without the consent of your client. That's what happened." Garrigo says, "Right. And there would be a motion to strike the, I legally took it." Prosecutor DiStasso says, "Objection, Your Honor, that's ongoing." Judge says, "This is an issue, whether there's an issue whether it was legally taken or not." DiStasso said, "There's no issue of that." Garrigo says, "Of course there is." Judge says, "I think there may be. I'm going to strike that legally taken." Garrigo says, "Thank you." Trial quote from Detective Jacobson testifying about telling the truth in the courtroom. "You know what, Judge, I'm not going to discuss the truth in the courtroom because this all happened. It's very simple. The defendant strangled or smothered Lacey Peterson on the night." This is a trial quote now from Prosecutor Rick DiStasso's closing argument. "It's very simple. The defendant strangled or smothered Lacey Peterson the night of December 23rd, or in the morning while she was getting dressed on the 24th. I can't tell you when he did it. I can't tell you if he did it at night. I can't tell you if he did it in the morning. I'm not going to try to convince you of something that I can't prove. I don't have to prove that to you. I only have to prove that he did it. But I've already told you I can't prove to you whether he killed her in the night or in the morning. I have never wavered from that or changed that. I'm not going to do it now. So I don't care if you think she got up in the morning, the next morning. It doesn't change the fact that he still killed her." Okay. Scott was fascinated with someone tried to mimic him according to former classmates. Yeah. Let's see. "I encourage you all to look into Scott's past," Shauna says, "to see further proof of what a lying POS he was. He even lied to his parents about getting a full golf scholarship to Arizona State with Phil Mickelson." Do you mean, okay, Phil Mickelson, okay. And let's see here.
I just have to say, I really appreciate the different voices. It makes it really easy to understand
Thanks.
who's talking.
Okay.
You've nailed that. You do it well.
Oh, yeah, I can't read Garagos without that voice. I don't know why. It's just stuck.
It works for me.
Okay.
It comes natural. It comes natural to us.
It does.
Uh,
Scott's Lies. Let's see. Is this one? Let's see. Let me go through this one. So it says, Scott's Lies. You don't have to go very far to hear someone call Scott Peterson a liar. He's called a liar much more than he's called a murderer in the negative emails we receive. And the number one question we're regularly asked, what about all the lies? I think many people would question Scott's conviction if he hadn't lied. All family and friends stood by Scott's side until his infidelity was revealed. Scott's lies about his adultery made him untrustworthy. So when he said he didn't murder his wife and unborn son, and when he said he had nothing to do with Lacey's disappearance, no one trusted him anymore. During Scott's trial, multiple television pundits took it a step further, and they called Scott a sociopath. Given Scott's lack of criminal history, lack of any history of violence or spousal abuse, lack of substance abuse, he had to be elevated to sociopath to explain how he could have committed murder. Dr. Roby Ludwig on Larry King on October 20th, 2003 said, and I quote, Scott Peterson is a very self-centered person who acts in a moment, and he really is egocentric with no sense of what's right and wrong. So there is a sociopathic element to Scott Peterson. Nancy Grace on Larry King on July 20th, 2004 said, and I quote, a sociopath is someone that does not appear to recognize or follow any of society's rules, and so far we have seen Scott Peterson lie prolifically at every given opportunity. Every possible chance he has to help police, to tell the truth, to not flout convention, to ignore his marriage vows, he clearly thinks the rules do not apply to him. If you guys don't agree with me, fine, we'll leave it up to a jury, but I think that clearly Peterson is showing himself to be a sociopath. Roy Black, the Abrams report from August 25th, 2004, said he certainly sounds like a sociopath. Crocker Snyder, the Abrams report, says he's a sociopathic liar. And a couple more from after the trial. Catherine Cryer of Dateline NBC, on March 10, 2005, says his abnormal calm in the face of both families, unbearable sorrow, his self-serving, narcissistic manner, and his failure to leave the police all supported my initial hunch that this man, Scott Peterson, was a sociopath. She, of course, had a book to promote. Dr. Keith Ablow, Time magazine, September 15, 2005, said, I think he absolutely did it, and he's a classic sociopath. He also had a book to promote. Most of these people were never in the courtroom, and the ones that were in there on very few occasions. Their descriptions of Scott's behavior are inaccurate and not supported by the evidence. Yet these pundits use their platform to inflame public opinion against Scott. Our compliments to Dr. Ramsland and Dr. Stout, who appeared on Larry King Live on May 4th, 2005, and stated the following, respectively. It's very hard to diagnose somebody that you haven't met, and I can't diagnose somebody I've never met. In this article, we intend to cover all the lies Scott told, at least the ones presented in his murder trial. The lies that Scott told fall into two categories. 1, adultery lies. 2, all other lies. The adultery lies include lies that Scott told Amber Fry and lies that he told to others about Amber Fry. All other lies will include the lies that Scott told the police, lies that were captured on wiretap phone calls, and any other lies presented in court. The category will also include lies pertaining to the murder. Once the lies are listed, you'll see that Scott did not lie on every opportunity, that Scott was very truthful, that Scott told many lies about adultery, but he did not tell any lies that had anything to do with murder. The lies that Scott told Amber Fry about his infidelity are covered at length in our Sex, Lies, and Audio Tapes article. Scott's adultery lies are an indication of what a bad liar he was. Amber caught him in adultery lies before Lacey went missing, and the police caught him in an adultery lie after Lacey went missing. Scott was a bad liar. He did not get away with one lie surrounding his adultery. Scott even called himself a liar. He apologized to Amber over 67 times during a wiretap phone conversation. He repeatedly said, "I'm sorry, I lied to you." Scott also called Diane Sawyer's producers after his January 27, 2003 interview was taped and said that he had lied during the interview. Scott had told Diane Sawyer during the interview that he had told police about his relationship with Amber Frey the night that Lacey went missing. He called ABC right after the interview was taped because it aired and confessed that wasn't true. Before it aired and confessed it wasn't true. Scott had lied to law enforcement about his infidelity the night Lacey went missing. Detective Bracchini had asked Scott if there were any problems in the marriage, and Scott said no. We're sure no one would argue that adultery would be a problem. The following day, Scott was interviewed by Agent Mansfield and the Department of Justice. Agent Mansfield asked Scott if there were any third parties to the marriage. Again, Scott said no. Surely this pattern of bad lying will be replicated in an attempt to cover up the murder of his wife and unborn son. So let's take a look at another lie Scott told. Let's start with the lies that Scott told law enforcement. How many lies do you think it takes to cover up a murder? Keep in mind, he's a sociopath. He's a proven liar, a bad liar, caught in every lie he told about his adultery. Scott gave hours of police interviews. He was repeatedly questioned about his whereabouts and activities. On December 23rd and 24th, he was questioned about their finances and their life together. Just guess. Pick a number. Keep in mind, the man's on death row for the murder of his wife and his unborn son. Surely he told numerous lies to cover their tracks. The truth is, Scott Peterson did not lie to the police about anything except Amber Frey. He did not tell law enforcement any other lies. The police assumed they were being lied to. They assumed just about everything Scott said was a lie. But as time went on, everything Scott told them was proven to be true. In fact, Detective Brocchini ended up testifying in court that Scott told me a lot of truth. Scott's account of December 23rd and 24th is detailed in our article, Scott's Timeline. We'll list the lies the police accused Scott of telling later. For now, we'll finish with the rest of Scott's actual lies. Let's see. Here are the remaining other lies that this sociopath told. His phone calls were recorded for over 4 months, so surely the lies to his family and friends are going to pile up, right? Surely his attempts to cover up murder and somehow be captured in innocent statements. The July 11th lies, Scott lied to 5 people about his whereabouts on July 11, 2003. His cell signal shows him near the Berkeley Marina in the morning and then in the Gilroy Holster area later that day. He told his mom he was in West Fresno. He told Lacey's mom, his dad, and his friend Guy that he was in Bakersfield, and he told Lacey's friend Heather that he was in Button Willow. During each of these 5 calls, his cell signal registers near Gilroy Hollister. Here's the prosecution's courtroom exhibit for Scott's cell phone activity that day. Let's see here. Okay. So, let's see. Ongoing to voicemail, Tower, Sharon Rocha, ongoing to Sharon Rocha, ongoing to Tower, Gilroy, Lee Peterson, Cell Tower, ongoing to... So, let's see here. All right, let me go
What
back.
point in the timeline was it when he colored his hair and took off and had all the money?
Oh, that was right at the end when he was going to get arrested, and then he put the gift in the bushes or something for Amber Fry. Yeah,
Okay.
it's right at the end. Yeah. Let's see. So now, let's see. For numerous law enforcement agencies were serving the San Francisco Bay for Lacey Peterson's remains. And make this a little smaller. The theory was that Scott had dumped her body there on December 24th when he said he was fishing. On January 9th, the Modesto Police Department issued a statement that they had found an object using sonar in the bay that appeared to be a body. They announced they would be returning to the site on Saturday, January 11th, to dive for the item. The prosecution speculated that Scott may have been lying about the location that day because he may flee if the police find Lacey's body. The only problem with that theory is Scott told these lies after it was revealed that the item in the bay detected on sonar was an anchor. Additionally, if Scott had dumped Lacey's body in the bay and the police announced on January 9th that they may have found a body, the time to flee would be when the announcement is made on January 9th, not after they pull a body out of the water. The absence of flight in this situation points towards Scott's innocent. Why Scott lied about his whereabouts is not in the trial record, but there's no evidence within these location lies that links him to Lacey's murder. There's no phone lies. The next lie is the voicemail message Scott left for a friend, John Farah, on February 3rd, 2003. The wiretap captured the following. Hey, John, this is Scott. It's 2:45 on Monday, and I'm sorry. I missed, looks like I missed a couple of your calls for the past 4 days or so. I went to grief counseling. I was out in the hills, no phone. So anyways, I do need to get those signs. I should be back in town. I'm just leaving the session now, and I'll give you a call back when I'm in town. Thanks, Joan. Scott's phone did show usage on the previous days. The alleged hair dye lie. While Lacey was missing, Scott's hair became lighter. Scott told his friend, Mike Richardson, that his hair was lightened due to swimming in a friend's pool, Aaron Fritz. Aaron Fritz testified that Scott had stayed at his home and was unaware if Scott had used the pool. The prosecution called this a lie, but presented no evidence proving it was, hence the word alleged. See our article, Scott Did Not Flee, for more information on Scott's changes in appearance while Lacey was missing. The boy named Sue lie. On April 12, 2003, Scott was buying a car from Michael Griffin. When completing the DMV paperwork, Scott said his name was Jacqueline Peterson, that's his mom's name. He told Michael it was a boy named Sue kind of thing. Jacqueline Peterson later testified in court that she told Scott to buy the car in her name because the police kept taking his vehicles. Okay, that's it. 0 lies to law enforcement, 1 cluster of lies on January 11th, and 3 other lies. A guy who told countless lies about adultery and got caught in every one of them did not get caught telling 1 murder lie. He did not tell any lies to cover up the murder because he didn't commit murder. Scott's alleged lies. Of course, the police rushed to judgment that Scott was guilty and assumed everything he said was a lie. Unfortunately, their belief was that he was guilty completely clouded their ability to investigate effectively. Some of these alleged lies have been covered in previous articles, but here's a list of the lies the police and prosecution accused Scott of telling. The prosecution alleged that Scott lied about his whereabouts on Christmas Eve and said that he was golfing instead of fishing. Police testimony and evidence shows that Scott never hid the fact that he went fishing. For more details, see our article, Alleged Lies. The prosecution alleged that Scott lied about following up on a sighting of Lacey in Longview, Washington. Police testimony and evidence shows otherwise. For more details, see our article, Alleged Lies. The prosecution alleged that Scott lied about meringue and cookies, but mentioned on Martha Stewart the morning of December 24th, therefore proving he wasn't really home and watching TV at that time. During the trial, a tape of the show was played, and Martha Stewart did indeed mention meringue cookies. The prosecution alleged in a pretrial motion that during his interview with Diane Sawyer, Scott said Lacey was okay with his infidelity. They asserted the guy's such a liar, he expects us all to believe his pregnant wife is okay with him having an affair. Scott never said Lacey was okay with his adultery. For more details, see our article, Sex Lies Audio Tapes. The police testified that Scott told them there was no electricity in his warehouse. Police testified that Scott voluntarily took detectives to his warehouse on the nights Lacey went missing to show them his boat. Police reports show that while on the way there, Scott told police that there was no lighting in the warehouse and that they have to use headlights of the car and flashlights to see in the warehouse. Police offered no evidence that the lights in the warehouse worked. Detective Hendy testified the light in the warehouse during the daytime search warrants was provided by skylights, no overhead electrical lighting. The prosecution said Scott lied about the time he left on Christmas Eve morning. Of course, one of the most asked questions of Scott the evening of Christmas Eve was, when did you leave home this morning? 7 people testified in court as to Scott's answer to that question. All of his estimates ranged from 9:30 to 10:30. It was later found that the Martha Stewart segment he saw aired at 9:48 a.m., so he was still home at the time. His cell phone records say that he was en route to his office at 10:08, so he left home at or before that time. He left home very close to 10 a.m. The average of the estimated times. The prosecution stated in their closing argument, now nobody at 10 minutes to 10 or 12 minutes to 10 says they're leaving at 9:30, so he's lying about that. Scott was not lying. He was being cooperative and estimating when he left the home on Christmas Eve morning. Scott said Lacey was wearing black pants and a white shirt when he left the house. However, Lacey's body was found in khaki pants. If it could be proven that Scott killed Lacey, then this would be a lie, but it does not prove any evidence of murder. If Scott had said he last saw Lacey in khaki pants and her body was found in khaki pants, it would prove no more evidence against him. We're not saying Scott lied about what his last saw Lacey wearing. We're saying that what Scott said was what he last saw Lacey wearing and nothing to do with convicting him of murder. Now that's quite a list of lies that Scott was accused of telling. To falsely accuse someone of lying in an attempt to get them convicted of murder, is that a lie? Now the police lies. It's quite typical, though through the course of an interrogation, for law enforcement to use deception to advance the investigation. In Scott's case, however, the lies and deception of the police and the prosecution were not used while interrogating Scott. Instead, deception was used, as Detective Braccini testified, to plant seeds of suspicion. These deceptive seeds were sown to the public during police press conferences, to Lacey's family, to Scott and Lacey's friends, to Scott's employer, to the court, and to the jury. In addition to falsely accusing Scott of lying about the items above, listed below is some of the additional wrong information that was disseminated. Police lied to family and friends, saying Scott had purchased the life insurance on Lacey after she became pregnant. The police suggest to Scott's employer that he may be embezzling, and an internal audit was done. No improprieties were found. The police repeatedly stated in their press conferences that they were unable to confirm that Lacey was walking her dog in the park. As outlined in our article, Lacey Sightings, the police didn't even make an effort to follow up on most of these leads. They were unwilling, not unable. The police released photos of Scott's truck and boat on January 2nd and issued a statement that they were trying to cooperate trip to the Berkeley Marina. They left the public with the perception that they couldn't confirm Scott's story. Scott had given them his receipt from the Berkeley Marina on December 24th, and the police had interviewed a city worker on December 27th who had seen Scott at the marina on December 24th. The prosecution insinuated that Lacey's body was found in the pants she was wearing the evening of December 23rd, which would implicate Scott. Lacey's sister, Amy, had told the police they were not the same pants. Detective Braccini removed information from a police report that was favorable towards Scott. He found a witness who saw Lacey at the warehouse just days before she disappeared. That would corroborate Scott's statement that Lacey knew about his boat. However, the police were trying to make the boat look like a secret purchase, so Detective Bercini excised that information from his report. It's shocking to think that Scott is on death row and there is no physical evidence against him. The prosecution provided no motive. The prosecution couldn't even state how or when Scott killed Lacey, and on top of all that, Scott told no lies pertaining to the crime that he's convicted of. Did Scott lie? Yes. Do any of those lies have anything to do with Lacey and Connor's disappearance or murder? No. It's ironic to think that so many people believe that Scott is guilty, largely due to his lies and infidelity, and yet what most people think to be true about Scott in this case is a lie. Of course, the primary source of information for the public was the media, but that's another article. Okay, so let's see. Get rid of this. Let's see what everybody says here. Motive and opportunity, Deborah Van Coverdon says. Hi, Petty Patty. Hey there, thanks. Thank you, Matariki. Thank you. Ian Kelly recently interviewed John Buller about this case. Give it a watch if you have time. Very eye-opening to the behind-the-scenes craziness. Okay, we'll do. We'll do. How is everyone tonight? Good, Petty Patty. How are you? We're just going through some of this in anticipation for the upcoming decision on December, what was it, 1st? 3rd? Okay, so let's see. Oh, thank you. So let's see. Behind the scenes craziness. Yeah, Megan Kelly. I'll check. Hi, Liza. Did you say that there is a Casey Anthony tell-all? Well, yeah, a documentary. I don't know it's going to be a tell-all. You know, I don't hold out a lot of hope for it, Liza. It's probably going to be much to do about nothing. It sounds to me like she's going to spin all of her lies. What do you think she's going to tell us? She's not going to tell us she's going to tell us lies. In my opinion.
Oh, let's play Cupid, Casey, Anthony, and Peter.
Peterson, Scott Peterson.
Yeah, Scott Peterson. With those two.
Oh boy. Yeah, not good. So some of you think he won't. Let's take a poll if you think he'll get a new trial or he won't. Let's see.
He got taken off death row, didn't he?
It's for a question and answer. Answer viewer question. Oh, what is this? This is something new. There's something new, guys. It says start a question and answer. Answer viewer questions live. What is that? Let's see. What? Say something. Okay.
Something.
Okay, let's see what happens. I don't know what this is like.
One way to find out.
Okay, now my whole chat is gone, and all I see is the question. So it says questions. So somebody type up, "How are you?" Eliza says.
Yeah, I think we answer the question in chat, so the question will pop up as a poll, I think.
No, it's not. It's something new. It's not a poll.
Oh,
It says answer your questions live. He will not get a new trial. I don't
So
understand.
instead of being a poll,
It's saying answer your, but no, it's saying answer your viewers' questions live.
Oh, the
So
viewer
how
asked
how
the
does
question.
that putting? I think you guys. It says start a question and answer, so it must mean that.
yeah, we can see a box here that's like it's like the poll one, except instead of ticking like a yes or a no,
Yeah.
it's I think we can answer the question there and
Does-
you'll see it. as
Well,
a
let's see.
question.
Can you write something in there?
No,
No.
only in the chat box.
I just did. I just
Yeah.
asked a question.
Oh,
Peter
Peterson.
It's just a random
Yeah,
basic
please.
question.
Can you see it all at your end, Carol?
I can. Yeah, but I just all I see is like the chat is just the other chat is gone, and it says. So I think it doesn't come back until I end this. But do you think he will get a new trial? No, I don't think he will get a new trial. Shanna says. Why? Because despite Rochelle's mistake, it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the verdict. But they already have to do one part of it, don't they? And if they have to do the one part of it, I think they might do the whole thing. I don't know.
Deborah Vancouver said she wrote in it. I had no idea how to do that.
I did. If you click on ask something, a box comes up to type in.
Oh, okay.
So you would be able to ask a question, but then I don't know what. Do you see my question? Kevin,
Yeah.
I see. Do you think he will get another trial? That's my question. But yeah, I see it.
And I think you can only do it once.
Did I
Yeah,
figure it out? Hi, Crafty Crafter. I don't know. I think you're in here. Maybe. I don't know. Let me see it when I end it. Let's see what happens when I end the question and answer. When I end the question and answer, it says, this rule will remove all questions in the question list. See, it brings me to a question list. Now when I click confirm,
It disappears.
it disappears, and it didn't even look like it disappeared. It just is back.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one more thing, Carolyn. When I was trying to type in chat, and twice it took my what I was typing away, even before I could send it. Makes you null and void in your chat bar.
No.
Say something in the chat bar, Gail.
And Liza
After
said
you took
only
away
once
my
every minute.
question, went in chat.
It was weird because I just saw the question, but it's, I don't know. I guess if you just want to talk, you know what? Maybe it's just to talk about a single topic or something.
Yeah.
I think if I
Hi,
was the
Juanita.
judge-
You said he told Amber he was single, and then later he said he lost his wife.
Yes.
But they're saying yes, he told a lot of lies about his infidelity, but that's just about his infidelity. That's not about murder.
Yeah, if I was the judge, I'd say Scott Peterson won play the game. It's like you can get a new trial, but only if the death penalty's back on the cards again.
So I say, if he gets a new trial, I hope he gets the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It was nothing but lies. I mean, you can't trust for somebody to lie about those things. I mean, what else is he lying about?
Well, even if there didn't end up being a body, like if we didn't find a body, there's enough circumstantial evidence to find him guilty.
I agree. I think so
Did you
too.
see what Robert Bob put in?
Yes, I heard it was the same judge who makes the decision, and hopefully he was convinced that Scott Peterson was
He
guilty.
became judge? Wow.
I don't know, because remember when they said he almost has to be retried to get that one part that his sentencing. So I think that being that they're going to let them do that again, that they're going to let him have a trial. I just feel like that. We'll see what happens, because they almost have to do the whole thing for the sentencing. I don't know. I just think they will be. I don't know. I feel like that.
Should they have? Mm. So the reason, so he's not on death row anymore, is he?
No.
And that was due to that juror that lied? Was that it?
Yeah.
Night, Shanna.
Juanita
Really?
said,
I
Night,
hate
Shanna.
when things happen because of technicalities. Like, and with that juror, did she get in trouble? Like, is there a consequence to her
Well,
action?
I mean, she didn't go to jail or anything like that. You know, she keeps saying like she didn't remember it. Juanita says Scott tried to hide at the candlelight vigil so Amber wouldn't see him on the TV news, right? And he said that he was in Paris, right? But again, they're saying that is related to infidelity, and that doesn't count. What can I tell you, Juanita? That's what they're saying. Kevin says his feeling is that
he's not in that state anymore.
That's motive.
What did you say?
Robert Bob says that she doesn't think the death penalty is in that state
It isn't.
anymore.
Well, no, yeah, right. That's right. They have like a moratorium on it, I think. Yep. Can a juror get charged for lying on their questioning?
They should.
Let's see.
Yes, Sean, it was nice seeing you tonight. Sweet dreams. Deborah Vancouver has said it's a snowball's chance of another trial, in her opinion.
I used to think that, but now that they're doing the sentencing and there's going to be a good part of testimony, and then I'm thinking they're just going to do it. I don't know. Jurors who lie to get on a jury can be charged with such offenses as contempt of court and obstruction of justice. So let's see,
Is there a sentencing range for that?
Rochelle.
It's just like how much money and time and effort and just everything went into his trial and bringing a death penalty case as well. Like,
I mean, the family have to be paying for it, right? Because he's got no access to any money.
no, I just mean like when a juror, like on technicality, something that they did.
Michelle
perjury.
Let's see. She gets immunity. Okay, strawberry shortcake. They got immunity, and Scott. Let's see. What does it say here?
Wow.
Immunity for what?
For coming forward, apparently. I don't know why.
Convicted murderer Scott Peterson is bucking for a new trial. Let's see. Peterson's attorneys want to overturn his conviction on the grounds of bias and misconduct, claiming that Rochelle Neese lied when she denied having been the victim of a crime or involved in a lawsuit. Peterson's team say that during jury selection, Rochelle Neese failed to disclose that she had been beaten by a boyfriend while pregnant in 2001, and that she had obtained a restraining order, considered a type of lawsuit against a boyfriend's ex-girlfriend during another pregnancy, fearing the woman would hurt her unborn child. Neese denies the allegations, but said she would exercise her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination if called to testify, avoiding a potential perjury charge. To eliminate that prospect, prosecutors are granting Neese immunity for the February 25th evidentiary hearing. Stanislaus County District Attorney Bridget Flatiger announced Monday, if Neese still refuses to testify despite her immunity, she could be hit with contempt of court charges. Peterson's lawyers contend that Neese actively pursued a spot on the jury because she wanted to punish him. She also wrote Peterson dozens of letters while he was on death row, co-authored the book We the Jury with other Peterson jurors, and has discussed the trial on 2020 News Nation and Tamron Hall, American Justice, True Hollywood Story, and TV documentary The Murder of Lacey Peterson. In 2017, Neese told the Modesto Bee, I did not lie to get on the trial to fry Scott. Okay, so that's it with her. Strawberry shortcake. Not lie to get on the trial to fry Scott. Juanita says, even the cops said, what bait did he use for fishing that day? Yeah, I remember that. Julie W. says, I would hate to be on that jury when someone says the prosecution didn't prove. I would hate to be on that jury when someone says the prosecution didn't prove their case. Lawyers go, they can.
You didn't even know what
Sounds
fish she was
like the
fishing for.
harassment.
It's like,
Yeah, that's it.
wasn't it like terrible weather and it was like really, the tides and everything were quite strong. It was like, that's why there was no one out there because it was such terrible weather.
Let me see here. The truth of our finances. What else? They have an opportunity. Which.
Didn't he say he was going to play golf first as well?
That's what they just said, that Scott lied about it.
Yeah.
That's a lot insane. Okay, what is this? January 2nd. Police report photos of truck and boat. Police investigators revealed photos of a truck and boat owned by Scott Peterson and urged the public to contact the department if anyone recalls seeing the truck and boat between December 23rd and December 25th. Modesto Police Department continues the search for Lacey Peterson, the 27-year-old expectant mother who has been missing since Christmas Eve. What do they say about this one?
Kevin wanted to know when they will decide if he gets another trial.
December 3rd. December 3rd. It was widely publicized that the police and other agencies were searching the waters of the San Francisco Bay for Lacey's body. The Berkeley Marina is the largest marina on this bay, and it's where Scott launched his boat when he went fishing on December 24th. Scott was actively involved in the search for his wife and visited not only the Berkeley Marina, but also the San Luis Reservoir and the Pittsburgh Marina, where searches occurred. Additionally, Scott had another pressing reason to visit the Berkeley Marina. It was no secret that Scott had gone fishing in the Bay Area on December 24th, the day his wife went missing. The simple truth is Scott never even hid the fact that he went fishing. He immediately gave the police his parking receipt from the marina, and he took officers to see his boat that evening. There's his parking receipt. In a sit-down interview with Detective Braccini the evening Lacey went missing, Braccini asked Scott if he saw or spoke with anyone. Scott said he talked to a couple of fishing guys, that the maintenance guys got a good laugh from me trying to back down the trailer. Braccini said, "Did you troll?" Now, that doesn't mean troll. That troll means you cast your line and then you just drag it along the back of the boat as you go along with the motor a little bit, okay? He said a little bit. I mean, a lot of the reason I went was just to get that boat in the water to see, Braccini says, yeah. Peterson, who's on the phone, says, Amy, what's going on? Amy, yeah. Oh, I don't know. Where are you at now? In front of our house, okay? Yeah, where you guys stay at your place, obviously, where Nate and Brent going. Okay, well, I don't know. Thanks, I appreciate it. Think you can call back in a little while? Thanks, Amy. Back to Braccini, sister-in-law. Braccini says, Amy? Scott says, yeah. Braccini says, is that Lacey's sister? Scott says, different mother, same father. Braccini says, okay. So you fish 90 minutes, then what? You go back to your house, you go back to the marina? Mm-hmm. Get back to your boat? Yeah. You see anybody? You talk to anybody out there? I talked to a couple guys fishing. They asked me, did you catch anything? Braccini says, yeah. No, they didn't either. The guys working, fixing main maintenance guys, got a good laugh from me trying to back that trailer down. Okay, and so guys laughing and a couple guys talking and fishing? Braccini says, then what? You drive? How did you get there? Peterson, Braccini says, how do you... I don't know what the heck that's supposed to mean. The night police asked Scott what kind of bait he used. Scott said he was not a bait fisherman. He preferred using lures. Since Scott did not name a type of bait, this of course became an inability to explain what he was fishing for. The next morning, the Modesto police published Scott's alibi in a press release, and multiple law enforcement agencies began using extensive resources to search the bay for Lacey's body. On December 26, Scott and other family members did a Good Morning America interview. At this point, if you watched the news in the United States, you knew that Lacey was missing, and Scott said he had been fishing. Modesto, California, and they hone in on this part here, and they say, Modesto police received a call from a man claiming that his pregnant wife had not been seen since 9:30 a.m. on Christmas Eve. Scott Peterson of Modesto left to the Bay Area to go fishing. His wife, Lacey Denise Peterson, 26, stayed home to shop for dinner that evening and to walk their dog at Dry Creek Park. On December 27th, Detective Armendariz with the Modesto Police Department found a Berkeley Marina groundskeeper that saw a Ford 4x4 extended cab pick up with a small trailer in the afternoon of December 24th, and it was backing into the ramp area. The driver was a white male adult with sandy-colored hair in his 30s and appeared to be having difficulty backing the trailer into the ramp area. The groundskeeper waited as the driver in the Ford truck drove back and forth in an attempt to align the truck and trailer. And this is the driver, this is redacted, recalled driving through the boat launch ramp area at about 12:45, seeing a new full-size dark green Ford 4x4 extended cab pickup truck with a small boat trailer. The trailer was empty and the vehicle was backing into the ramp area. The person remembered seeing the driver, who he described as a white male adult in his 30s, sandy-colored hair, wearing what looked like a polo shirt, recalled the Ford truck was blocking the path, and the driver appeared to be having difficulty backing the trailer into the ramp area. The person waited as the driver of the Ford truck drove back and forth in an attempt to align the truck and the trailer. Just to recap, Scott was a male, white adult, medium brown hair, 30, driving a Ford 4x4 extended cab, towing a small trailer, claiming to be at the Berkeley Marina the afternoon of December 24th, claiming to have had trouble backing up the trailer, and claiming to have seen a maintenance guy in the ramp area. We're checking lots of boxes here. It looks like Detective Armendariz did good police work, and it looks like Scott told the truth. However, on January 2nd, Detective Grogan said called Scott and said, "You said you were there, and some people over there saw you having trouble backing the boat down. We tried to find them. We have not been able to. So we're going to have to show a photograph of your truck and the boat to the press today just to see if we can get some witnesses to come forward." And this is a phone call between Grogan and Scott Peterson. Grogan says, okay, about 1:30. Peterson says, yeah, I'll probably swing by right about then. Grogan says, all right, I should be here. Peterson says, thank you, Craig. Grogan says, thanks. Peterson says, you've been a big help. Grogan says, bye. Phone rings again. Gets the voicemail. Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice message system. Scott Peterson is not available. At the tone, please record your message. Beep. Grogan says, hi, Scott. It's Craig Grogan. Thursday the 2nd at about 2:20. Your wallet and your keys are here. They are ready, but I was going to talk to you about something before that when you came down, and just to let you know that they plan to do a press release, and basically at my request. So if you're mad, you can be mad at me, but we needed to firm up if anybody saw you over there. And you said that there were some people over there that saw you having trouble backing that boat down. But we tried to find them, but we haven't been able to. So we're going to show you a photograph of your truck and the boat to the press today, just to see if we can get. He is actually saying this. I'm not saying it again. If we can get some witnesses come forward on that, so you'll get this. But I wanted to let you know that first. It didn't look like you were stopping by here, so I'm just going to leave the message so you can call me, and you may want to, I have that stuff when you want it. Take care. Take it easy. Bye. Okay.
Well, when you that didn't count.
So let's see. It says that press release from the day the Modesto police needed the public's help to corroborate Scott's trip to the Berkeley area. This created a public perception that the police could not confirm whether Scott was telling the truth about being at the marina. Over the next week, police surveillance showed that Scott made 3 attempts to the Berkeley arena, 3 trips. One of the reasons he made these trips was to look for the people he saw on December the 24th. These trips to look for witnesses are called surreptitious in court documents, as though Scott is secretly returning to the scene of the crime. Okay, and they put a big X in this. And the trailing testimony aside, there were considerable other circumstantial evidence incriminating from the simple fact that Lacey and Connor's bodies washed ashore. See, and it's crossed out from their home, but then the site of where Peterson admitted he went fishing and then disappeared. The research Peterson did on bait currents in the weeks preceding her disappearance, and the fishing boat he bought but mentioned to no one. Peterson's inability to explain what he was fishing for in the middle of the day, repeated subsequent surreptitious trips to the marina in the weeks after her disappearance, to the many steps he took in the weeks after she went missing, to the car, exploring sale of the house, turning the nursery into a storage room. Okay, that's what they have there. They have that, and they say Scott was not returning to the scene of a crime. He was looking for witnesses the police claim that they could not find. This is the kind of twisted evidence the state continues to use to claim that Scott is guilty. Scott's use of rental cars. The prosecution also implied that Scott was sneaking to the marina in automobiles that weren't usually associated with him. Scott used friends' vehicles as well as rental cars. We offer the following facts regarding Scott's use of rental cars. On December 26, 2002, both Scott's F-150 4x4 crew cab and Lacey's Land Rover were confiscated by the Modesto police to be searched. The Ford had a monthly payment of over $600 that Scott had to maintain even though the truck was in police custody. The vehicle was returned to Scott's family after his arrest by court order in the fall of 2003. From December 26 to January 3rd, while both his vehicles were in police custody, Scott either borrowed vehicles from friends or rented vehicles. On December 30th, Scott told Detective Grogan during a phone conversation that he would need to start renting a car if one of his cars was not returned, as he had been borrowing cars up to that point. The police returned Lacey's Land Rover to Scott on January 3rd. Scott had the police drop the Land Rover off at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, where he was returning a rental car. Lacey's Land Rover was returned to Scott with multiple problems. Scott returned it to the Modesto police for repair on January 15th. The Modesto police made repairs to the vehicle and returned it to Scott on January 23rd. From January 3rd to January 15th, before Scott returned the Land Rover to the police to be repaired, Scott would rent vehicles if he was leaving Modesto due to the mechanical problems with the Land Rover. During this time, Scott had to rent a pickup to take care of delivery for work. From January 15th to January 23rd, the Land Rover was being repaired by the police so that both vehicles were once again in police custody. Again, Scott rented a Lincoln Town Car during this week as his bosses were in town from Europe. From January 27th to January 29th, Scott rented a Dodge Dakota pickup. He needed to move the items from the warehouse to his home and storage unit. On January 29th, Scott traded in the Land Rover for a Dodge Dakota pickup. His only car rental after that date was on February 18th when the police confiscated his Dodge Dakota pickup for a day. Not only did Scott tell police he was going to have to rent cars, he had the police meet him at Enterprise Rent-A-Car on January 3rd. The Enterprise facility is about 6 blocks from the Modesto police station. It is egregious to assert that Scott was trying to sneak around in automobiles that weren't usually associated with him. Now, this is audio of Scott and Detective Grogan, where Scott discusses his need for a vehicle while his vehicles are in police custody.
And I'm working on trying to get that out, but your truck, I mean, we may have that for a little while. Because like a car, I don't know, that might be able to be something we can get back to in the next couple of weeks. That'd be great. And yeah, we need some wheels pretty soon. Yeah, people are leaving town and their bottle cars, but is that what's been happening? Need one. Yeah, I'm gonna need one to, either go rent one or get the rover back to keys so I can continue working in the center down here, the volunteer center. Yeah. All right. Well, I wish I could promise you that it was going to be done at a certain time. I'm not the one doing it, and I got my crime scene guys are just running all over the place doing all kinds of things. So as soon as they get time to process it, we're going to do that. Okay. Thanks. If I can get one of those cars back, it'd be big help in finding Lacey. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Rick. All right.
Okay. The trade-in of Lacey's Land Rover. On January 29th, Scott traded in their Land Rover for a 2002 Dodge Dakota pickup. We offer the following facts regarding the trade-in of Lacey's car. Scott had asked several times for his truck to be returned to him. See Detective Grogan's testimony. It was not going to happen, so Scott needed to make other arrangements because he needed a truck for work. The used 2002 Dodge Dakota that Scott purchased on January 28th was worth less than the 2002 4x4 crew cab F-150 the police had confiscated. The suggestion that Scott was uncaring and went to get a new truck while his wife was missing is unreasonable. Scott had a new truck before Lacey went missing, but it was in police custody. His car was traded in for the Dodge out of necessity. Okay, so let's see what you think about that. Blood work tomorrow. I hope everything goes well for you, LMNW. Have a good night. So, time is it? 2:36. I feel another judge is not going to override another judge. Anyone get another trial? Just my opinion. Okay? You're entitled to your opinion. Let's see what else. Anything else here? Let's look at did not flee. Due to inaccurate news reports, things falsely implied in court, and rumors, many people inaccurately believe that Scott had intent to flee to Mexico or that he had actually fled to Mexico. We can address that later by simply stating that Scott did not flee to Mexico. He was arrested in San Diego, as will be outlined below. Scott begins spending more time in San Diego. On January 15th, the Rocha family was informed about Scott's affair with Amber Fry. On January 16th, the Modesto Volunteer Center for Lacey was closed down against Scott's wishes. Beginning in late January until his arrest on April 18th, Scott made multiple trips to San Diego to be with family. Scott had been literally forced out of his home. His wife and unborn child had been taken from him, and there was constant traffic driving by their home. The media was camped out there. Their home had been stripped of many items during the search warrants, none of which had any evidentiary value. Radio DJs called out to him with bullhorns while airing their show live in front of his house. His house had been broken into, and the volunteer center and any effort to find Lacey alive had ended in Modesto. Guess Betty wasn't there back then, huh? All right, let's see. On January 19th, our family held a one-day volunteer center at a hotel in Los Angeles. The hotel was owned by the same group that owned the Red Lion, where the volunteer center for Lacey was in Modesto. When the idea was suggested to us by hotel management, we accepted. Why not Los Angeles? Lacey had been gone for about a month, and at that point, she could have been anywhere. It was an opportunity for us to keep Lacey in the picture in the national media. On January 20th, 2003, the show of Larry King Live, one of the guests, a former FBI profiler named DeLong, expressed her concern at Scott's traveling to Los Angeles and San Diego, stating that he may be making a run for the border. That was the beginning of public speculation that Scott was going to flee, and yet 3 months later, Scott had not fled. Scott continues the search for Lacey. Once Scott's affair was made public and the Modesto Volunteer Center had been shut down, Scott could have given up and let everything die down. He didn't have to do any interviews. He could have said nothing to us, as his attorney Kirk McAllister had advised. In an interview with Maria Shriver in mid-2003, Kirk McAllister said that he had told Scott to keep his mouth closed tighter than a cow's arse in fly season. But Scott chose to ignore the advice of his attorney because he wanted to find his wife. Scott conducted media interviews without an attorney present and stated for people to think of him of what they wanted, but not to give up on looking for Lacey. Is this something a guilty person would do, or did Scott have what is known as the arrogance of innocence? Scott's trips to Southern California are confirmed by police surveillance and the testimony of Officer Schulte. Not only were the police aware that Scott was in Southern California, but there was no testimony that Scott ever attempted to flee. Scott not only made multiple trips to San Diego, he also went to Guadalajara, Mexico, and came back on a business trip early in February. He left the Los Angeles area for Guadalajara on February 3rd, and he returned on February 7th. The police were aware that he was going there. 2 bodies were found, and the media attention intensifies. On August 13th, the body of a baby was found on the Richmond shoreline. On April 14th, the remains of a woman were found on the shore of the East Bay Regional Park. There was widespread speculation that these were the bodies of Lacey and Connor. The media's presence at our homes in San Diego returned. At any given time, at least 6 media vans and satellite trucks were camped out at Scott's parents' house, and at least 3 vans were at his brother Joe's house. Each arrival and departure was met with constant questions regarding Scott's whereabouts and the identity of their bodies. During that week, Scott had stayed with friends in San Diego and with his sister Susan and her family in the Escondido area, also in San Diego County. On Wednesday, April 16th, Scott wrote down 1 partial and 3 complete license numbers of vehicles that were following him. Based on the media presence at our home, Scott believed them to be private investigators hired by the media and indicated so on his fax to the attorney Kirk McAllister. The fax was entered as Exhibit D6W5. Friday, April 18th was Good Friday, and Scott had plans to go golfing at Torrey Pines Golf Course with his dad Lee and his brothers Mark and Joe. As Lee testified, I was going to get 3 of my boys together and play golf and just look for normalcy in our lives, get together and be together and enjoy our company. Scott left Susan's house in Escondido at about 7 a.m. He headed south to Ocean Beach, during which time he noticed he was being followed. He went to his brother John's house in Ocean Beach, where he picked up John's driver's license to use at the Torrey Pines Municipal Course. San Diego residents get a discounted green fee. Lee wanted to save money and suggested to Scott that he pick up John's license so they could get the discount. On the way to the golf course, Scott called his brother Joe and told him he wasn't going to be able to come because he was being followed. In the conversation, he indicated that he thought he was being followed by the media. The conversation was recorded and entered as Exhibit D8X. Without revealing they were police, 9 to 10 different unmarked cars followed Scott for over 160 miles in a 4-hour circle north into Orange County, east to Riverside, and south back to San Diego. Scott was once again making note of the cars that were following him. Scott did not evade the police. As Scott was approaching the golf course where his dad and brothers would soon be finishing, the police made their first and only attempt to pull Scott over. Officers Quick and Lamone testified that as soon as they put up their sirens, Scott immediately pulled over. Scott was not arrested in Mexico or while attempting to flee to Mexico. He was arrested while trying to meet up with his father and brothers. On the day of Scott's arrest, what was formerly referred to as San Diego on the news became 30 miles from the Mexican border. For those of you not familiar with Southern California, San Diego County borders Mexico. Downtown San Diego is roughly 20 miles from Mexico. This created a widespread belief that Scott had fled. We also want you to consider what Mark Garagos asked while questioning Officer Scher. Do you know a lot of guys who trade in their trucks to buy a bright red Mercedes so that they can go camp in Mexico? Scott's appearance changed between December 24th and April 18th. He lost over 20 pounds. He grew a goatee, and his hair was lighter. None of these changes took place overnight or made him unrecognizable. Scott's picture has been plastered all over the media, and slow-motion video of him has been shown on TV with creepy music in the background. Scott has become a recognizable figure. The goatee and hair color may have helped Scott avoid being recognized by media or someone on the street. But he was not trying to use these changes to hide from the police. You can see by the photos below that Detective Grogan had seen Scott outside his home on February 18th, looking almost exactly like he did on the day of his arrest. Scott never tried to hide or evade the police. Once arrested, Scott was taken to the Department of Justice offices in San Diego, and while there, he recognized Agent Sonia Ramos as one of the people who had been following him that morning. She had fishtailed him and almost gotten into an accident. Scott apologized to her and said he didn't mean to cause her any harm. He said he thought she was the media. Camping gear and knife in the driver's door. The camping gear and the knife in Scott's car was purchased in March 16th at REI, 1 month and 2 days before his arrest. The store was adjacent to the soccer field where he had attended his nephew's soccer game. Scott's friend, Mike Richardson, testified that he knew Scott enjoyed camping. Video was shown in court from a trip where Scott had gone hiking and fishing with his dad, his nephews, in the fall of 2002. Modesto police officers Hendy, Eichelbaum, and Grogan all testified to finding camping gear or rugged camping gear when they had executed search warrants in December and February. Scott was an outdoorsman, and he had bought some new gear. He just didn't have a place to take it home to. The knife in the driver's side door belonged to Michael Griffin, former owner of the Mercedes. He testified in court that when he cleaned out the car, he had forgotten it in the pocket of his driver's side door. The photo below shows police found the knife in the exact place that Michael had left it. When Scott was arrested, he had over $14,000 cash with him following, hold on 1 second. Following is a series of events that led to Scott having so much cash with him. This was testified to in court, and bank records confirm it to be true. Most of these exhibits were not made public because they contained personal banking information. Scott's pickup was in police custody, and he wasn't going to get it back anytime soon. So about a month after Lacey went missing, Scott bought a Dodge Dakota pickup. Scott was still making car payments on the truck that was in police custody, and now he had to make a payment on that Dodge. He soon realized this was not ideal, so Scott arranged to sell the Dodge to his brother John. Scott's mom, Jackie, was going to loan John $8,000 to buy Scott out of the Dodge. John was then going to take over the payments to the bank. Scott was then to buy a cheaper car for cash and eliminate having a second car payment. On April 8th of 2003, Jackie went to Bank of America to withdraw $10,000 from an old account that she rarely used. She did not know her account number, so she gave them her social security number to look it up. Unbeknownst to Jackie, she was listed on Scott and Lacey's checking account as well. Jackie had opened that account with Scott in 1991. Scott added Lacey when they were married and never removed his mother. Isn't that cute? The bank gave Jackie $10,000 from Scott's checking account. The withdrawal receipt was entered as Exhibit D8. why he won. Jackie paid Scott $8,000 cash for his equity in the Dodge pickup. She paid him cash so he could better negotiate when shopping for a car. On April 12, 2003, Scott purchased a Mercedes from Michael Griffin. He paid him with 36 $100 bills. Scott had $4,400 left of his $8,000 his mommy gave him. Scott then discovers that $10,000 withdrawal from his bank account. He sees the withdrawal ticket signed by Jackie, realized she mistakenly drew the money out of Scott's account. Oh boy, isn't that mistakenly drew it out of his account. Jackie then goes to Washington Mutual on April 17th, and she withdraws $10,000 out of her account. She gives the money to Scott that day to replace the money she took out of his account. She paid him in cash so that the bank would not put a hold on his funds. So now he has roughly $14,400 in cash. Scott's arrested in the morning of April 18th. He had yet to deposit the money his mother had given him. Come on, guys. On the day before. Scott also had some foreign currency with him when he was arrested. The two bills were photographed with other items and entered as People's Exhibit 29329. One bill is worth 50 pesos and the other's is 20 pesos. This is roughly worth $6.40 US. This is not an unreasonable amount of pocket change for someone who had recently returned from Mexico. The exhibit is sealed due to a personal check shown in the photo. Scott knew very early on that the police were suspicious of him. His good friend Greg Reed had heard a comment from an officer the night that Lacey went missing that said police felt they already knew what happened. The police had searched his house and his vehicles. They also held a press conference asking the public to help confirm whether or not Scott went to the Christmas Eve. They didn't believe him. See Greg Reed's testimony. If Scott had any intent to flee, why hadn't he done it yet? If Scott were guilty, wouldn't he have fled when the two bodies were found? No need to wait until they were identified. He would have known who they were. In early January, the police announced that they had found an object in the bay that appeared to be a body. They announced it could be more than 3 days until they can get back and retrieve it. If Scott was guilty and had intentions of fleeing, wouldn't that have been a good time as well? The item ended up being an anchor. Okay, so let's see. 20,000 with the 14 bucks for the golf club. Hi. Okay, so yeah, but I think I'm going to start the new Zoom because I'm getting a little sleepy. Let me start the new Zoom. Hold on, I'm still here, guys. I didn't go anywhere. I'm right here. It's been a long day. So there comes the Zoom. New Zoom review coming straight for you. Invite. Copy. Do. Okay, let me go to Slack. Where are you, Slack? Okay, there you go.
Come in.
That's quite the picture.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Margot.
Nicole.
You're late.
late. It feels like
It feels like it's so late. My gosh, my eyes are like, I just want to go. Enough.
It feels later than it is.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm not tired, I guess.
Thank you. You're welcome, Rubbity Bub. All right, we'll look more into it. We can look more into it tomorrow. There's a lot to go through, and we'll see. But everybody have a good night. Thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow. God bless. Thank you, the moderators. Thank you guys for watching. See you tomorrow.
Don't forget to hit the like on your way out. Hit the like.
Good night, everybody.
Night.